Chapter 1201. Since he was already outside, Qin Guang stayed next to the car for a few minutes. He had an idea. He simply flew straight out and headed in the direction of Lilai County. Strictly speaking, he couldn't be called flying. He could only be considered floating, but his speed wasn't slow. In ancient times, Fan Juqing committed suicide to meet Zhang Zhao. The ancients had a guess about the speed at which the soul drifted. It was about 1,000 miles a day. In the past, when Qin Guang read this story, he was stunned. He felt that the person named Fan Juqing died too casually and honestly, and he let down his family. As for the soul traveling 1,000 miles, he used to think that it was all nonsense. Now that this kind of thing happened to him, he had to believe it even if he didn't want to. As he floated, he thought. Although the ancients were very imaginative, they were still lacking. With my current flying speed, it's not just 1,000 miles a day. I can't even go as fast as 10,000 miles per hour. In his perception, only a few dozen seconds had passed at most, and he had already appeared in the sky above Lilai County with a whoosh. Of course, compared to the outside world and other people, perhaps not even a second had passed. Everything was still in a state of stillness. The first thing that came into Qin Guang's eyes was the Qin family's villa that had been blown up. When he received the notification, the explosion had already happened for about half an hour. Even now, thick smoke was still billowing and sparks were flying everywhere. Qin Guang went closer to check the situation first. It was really blown up and even the foundation was gone. Some time ago, when the house was being renovated, his mother would proudly take photos of the pretentious effect and send them to his WeChat. Now it was all gone. Qin Guang walked around in the frozen fire and came to the location of his bedroom according to the plan. He looked down. The various treasures he had collected when he was young were scattered all over the place in the raging flames, and had already been burned to ashes. The water margin cards that he collected when he ate crispy noodle snacks, Jigong comic books, slam dunk posters. In short, these things that he once loved were all gone, all gone. Although his parents took the whole family to hide in another place, it was impossible to take these things with them. No one would think that the assassin organization would be so crazy. Qin Guang looked around again and found a few pieces of metal fragments. Sure enough, the assassin organization had used a powerful weapon. Perhaps they were guarding against the basement in the villa, so they decided to give it a try. In that case, the murderer shouldn't be too far away. When they found that there was no one in the house, they wouldn't give up so easily. They would probably continue to stay in Lilai County to look for opportunities. With another thought, Qin Guang appeared at the hiding place of his parents. The two of them looked distressed. Based on Qin Guang's understanding of the two of them, his mother should be feeling heartache for the cross-stitch that she painstakingly embroidered, while his father should be feeling heartache for the 100-inch television that he bought to watch soccer. Forget it, it's fine as long as he's fine. After strolling around for a while, Qin Guang went out again. In his current state, it would not be difficult for him to uncover the assassins who were hiding among the ordinary people in Lilai County. He floated into the air, closed his eyes, and carefully felt the emotions of the other people in the entire Lilai County area. Then, something incredible happened. His thoughts, which had been compressed and fixed in the outside world, suddenly dispersed with a loud bang. It was as if he had entered the next realm. In the past, there was a point of view that to some extent, the human mind transcended time and space. A person could imagine that 10,000 years had passed in an instant in his mind, but only a moment had passed in the outside world. Assuming that the world in his mind really existed, then in the world he imagined, a long time had really passed, and his mind had completely transcended the concept of time. This was a very subjective concept of idealism, and in the past, Qin Guang often ridiculed people who held such ideas as neurotics. But now his concept was subverted again. When the tentacles of his mind became infinitely active and could spread to every place in the whole world in an instant, he truly understood what it meant to transcend time and space. With a thought, his mind appeared directly in front of the Eiffel Tower in France. Then he slightly lowered his head to look directly below him, and with another thought, he could see the ground made of cement and steel retreating rapidly in front of him. He turned into an invisible earthworm that drilled down, and then appeared in a dark and cold basement. There were 17 or 18 people sitting in this basement, and in front of them was a row of monitors. The screen on the monitor was a bird's eye view of Lilai County, and the Qin family's villa that had been blown up was even marked with a red dot. Qin Guang was shocked himself. Have I become God mode where everything I want comes true? I just wanted to find an assassin, but I actually went straight to the enemy's lair. So the question is, what should I do to kill these bastards? As Qin Guang thought about this in his mind, he tried to reach out and pat the guy's head in front of him, but without any suspense he hit nothing. He pondered for a while and came up with a sudden idea. He tried to gather his mental strength and his mind into a bundle, and then tried to probe the guy's head in front of him bit by bit. This specific method was a bit similar to many of the techniques that he had cultivated in the past that had the effect of mental shock, but in practice the method was more illusory. Everything was based on the existence of his current pure spirit body state. After a while he retracted his mental strength, and when he opened his eyes again, there was a double image of the person in front of him. This time when Qin Guang stretched out his hand again, he did not miss anything, and he actually grabbed something. He pulled hard, and the double image of the person in front of him was pulled out by him. With another chop of his hand, this seemingly real but not real double image was smashed by him. The person was dead. Even if his body was still alive, his spirit was dead. He used the same method on the other 10 people, and then with a thought, Qin Guang's mind went back to Lilai County. He could not believe that after erasing the consciousness of more than 10 people, he did not feel the slightest bit of emotional fluctuation. This feeling was perhaps worse than accidentally stepping on a few ants while walking on the road. At least at that time he would look down at the struggling ants and feel a little sympathy in his heart. He suddenly became vigilant. Could it be that he was really gradually losing his humanity? But when he looked at his parents in front of him, a trace of warmth surged in his heart. No, I'm still that reliable young man of the new era. But what's going on? He became extremely conflicted in his heart. But no one could give him an answer. He was like a lonely prisoner locked in an empty cell, imprisoned for an instant but also for eternity. Even Lioli, who had always given him countless suggestions at critical moments, had completely cut off contact with him. Qin Guang quietly stayed at home, sitting beside his parents for a while. Then he got up and went out for a stroll. This time, all the killers lurking near Lilai County were cleared by him. When erasing the consciousness of these killers, he even deliberately slowed down and used his heart to feel the pain of their souls being torn apart. He thought that this would make his heart a little ripple. No, there was no emotion. This time it was not even comparable to pinching an ant to death. Ants were creatures after all. If there was an extreme animal protection organization, at least they could find a reason to criticize this person for being cold and heartless. He felt like a person cutting lettuce with a kitchen knife. Animal protection organizations did not protect lettuce. Qin Guang ran to Wu Tong's side in Wujing City. Sure enough, he also found a killer, but he did not have time to do it. This time, when Qin Guang tore apart these people's souls, he felt like he was cutting lettuce with a pair of scissors. Well, at least they were organic. The Organic Protection Organization had something to say. He strolled to Yanjing and crushed the souls of the killers around Jin Shiyue. This time he felt even more faint, as if he had smashed a brick into two. Qin Guang thought to himself, it's over, it's really over this time. He could not let these people go, but the more he killed, the less he felt. This should be a very sad thing, but why can't it cause any ripples in my heart? It's not right to say that I really have no feelings. My motive for doing this has never changed from the beginning. I want to protect the people I care about, and then destroy the people I don't care about. So, it is a paradox to say that I have lost my humanity and am cold-blooded and heartless. As Qin Guang thought of this, he touched Jiang Ye's face and then immediately left. Unknowingly, it might have been a few days since he came out of the world of cups, but in a sense it might not even be a second. Qin Guang remembered exactly how many souls he had crushed, no more and no less, a total of 27,638 souls. All the killer organizations and individuals who were tempted by the $400 million bounty were not spared. Ever since his villa was blown up, before he entered the world of killings, Qin Guang had never thought of sparing these people. At this moment, he was in such a strange state, so it was even more impossible for him to be merciful. Suddenly, more than 27,000 people became crazy. Perhaps tomorrow it would shock the world. But it was also possible that nothing would change. In the face of the world's population of nearly 7 billion, more than 20,000 people were not a big number. Tens of millions of people died every year, more than 20,000 people went crazy at the same time, of which about 2,000 were in Lilai County, and the rest were scattered all over the world. Other than causing some diplomatic chaos in Lilai County, it did not seem to be a big deal. As Qin Guang thought about it, he suddenly felt something in his heart. It seemed that for every single individual, life was so precious that it could not be regained once it was lost. But once this individual's life was magnified to the entire race or the entire world or even across the distance of time to the long river of history, even if an emperor were to die, it would not be a big deal. Perhaps some people would say that the change in the Black Tortoise Gate changed history. If Li Jianqing were to take over the throne, according to the butterfly effect, then in front of us would be another world. Some people would say that if Chiojiju did not pass by Ox Village, but if time was stretched out from the birth of the first single-celled organism on Earth to the present billions of years ago, from the Jurassic period to the present, and then another billions of years later. When the sun's life came to an end, it would not matter how many emperors died. Then, if the entire universe's long history of tens of billions of years, even if the sun exploded, even if the Milky Way collided with the Andromeda Galaxy, so what? Therefore, killing more than 20,000 people was not a big deal. Qin Guang quietly looked at his mother in front of him and thought again. I should have long separated my vision from the realm of mortals. When the Holy Grail leveled up for the first time, from seeing spirit sky to one-line sky, when my consciousness followed the power of the Holy Grail to the end of the universe for the first time, I should have understood this matter. When I don't need to care about something, then I am the master of the entire universe. I don't need to be responsible for a single individual. When I care about someone or something, then whether that person's mood is happy or not is the most important thing in the entire universe. Its importance is far greater than that of a planet filled with extraterrestrial life exploding in the infinitely distant starry sky. When this thought suddenly became clear, his whole body suddenly trembled. When he came back to his senses, he was already back in the slaughtering world. He was still trapped in Blood Pigeon's body, lying on the ground in pain and powerlessness. Not far away, there was an explosive magic arrow flickering with red light that was about to pierce his eyeball. His stomach was filled with many strange things. They were the robots that the household appliance Fatty had transformed into, continuously throwing things like rice cookers, microwave ovens, electric fans, and so on through a conveyor belt. The situation still looked extremely dangerous, but his heart was calm. Chapter 1202. One of the three biggest misconceptions in life was that he could kill his opponent. However, Qin Guang knew that he wasn't imagining things. The players who were imagining things were overflowing with joy, especially Yu Ting. He was no longer hiding in the corner, but instead he confidently walked towards Qin Guang. Wathani was sitting on his shoulder. The two remaining Protoss had finally found their true sense of existence. As for the human players, after Qin Guang went on a killing spree, there were less than 10 left. However, everyone's faces were brimming with joy. The final boss was finally going to rise to the heavens. Even the steadiest old man couldn't control his emotions. Although his actions were still very careful, he couldn't hide the joy in his eyes. Qin Guang didn't panic at all. The mysterious power that had been destroying his body seemed to have run out, and the burning sensation on his back had disappeared. Fine, I don't have my back anymore. Qin Guang lay on the ground, his stomach still stuffed things into Fatty's stomach. Damn it, if you didn't send in electrical appliances, I'm afraid I'd already be pregnant. I'll give you an air humidifier later, it'll scare you to death. Qin Guang wasn't in a hurry to get up and resist. He continued to lie on the ground, looking like he was on the verge of death. At the same time, he carefully examined the effects of the unlucky magic formation that Yu Ting had placed in the Colosseum. After some investigation, he felt a little relieved. The damned no-pigeon magic formation had disappeared. This meant, fine, I can't even stand up now, let alone fly. Then Qin Guang began to examine his injuries. He didn't know how many bones there were in the pigeon's body, so he didn't know how many bones he had broken. In any case, he was sure that most of them were broken. Most of his internal organs were damaged. Fortunately, his skull was hard enough, so his head hadn't been broken yet. The heart, which was about 1 or 2 people tall, was also full of scars with a large hole in it. This was the work of an elven archer. However, he had to thank the fat household appliance. No one would believe him if he told them that the old rice cooker thrown by the fat household appliance was stuck in the hole, blocking the blood that was supposed to spurt out. Everyone, it's time to send it off. Yu Ting walked up to the blood pigeon and stood about 5 to 6 meters away from its head. He looked relaxed, but in fact, every muscle in his body was tense. Qin Guang's sharp ears could even hear the dull sound of thunder from his abdomen. His divine power was ready to be unleashed. A rumbling sound came from behind him. When the fat man saw Yu Ting approach first, he finally dared to drive his robot closer. Is it about to end? Fatty's voice came from afar. He looked at Blood Pigeon's huge body on the ground and blinked a little. Without batting an eyelid, he turned his gaze to the middle school student who was driving the smaller robot beside him. The middle school student nodded slightly, and the two understood. In the blink of an eye, the tall and short household appliance robots suddenly turned around and charged at each other. However, the two did not collide. The moment they were about to collide, the two huge robots suddenly emitted a strange light. It was very similar to the 3D scanning beam that the fat household appliance worker used to make the microwave. Then, the two robots that had completely turned into balls of light melted like liquid and fused together. When the light dissipated, there was only an even bigger giant robot left. In the cockpit covered by the super strong glass cover, there was no sign of the fat household appliance worker. Only the middle school student was left. The cover on the robot's chest was opened, and an empty combat suit fell out. Others might not understand what was going on, but Qin Guang, who was lying on the ground and pretending to be dead, saw it clearly. Even he was shocked. Wasn't this little wimp hiding his abilities a little too deeply? He even lied to himself. There was no fat person in the beginning. This fat person was his puppet. It wasn't just a toy puppet. The middle school student had even cut out a part of his soul and stuffed it into the fat puppet's body. He had even fooled Qin Guang and the Protoss. The giant robot that was recombined no longer looked like a funny household appliance. It looked full of mechanical beauty, but the joints were not simple mechanical combination. Instead, they were like human joints that had a biological structure. As a veteran anime fan, Qin Guang saw through this thing at first glance. What a scam. Isn't this the robot number 1 that Shinji drove in the EVA? Don't think that I won't recognize you just because you changed the paint from purple to white. Before Qin Guang could finish his sentence, the middle school student number 1 took out a giant gun that was about 50 feet long from its thigh. The black muzzle was aimed at Yuting's head. Get out of the way or I'll kill you. The middle school student's voice came from the chest of the robot number 1, with a strong electronic tone. That's right, you've obtained a lot of damage. Shouldn't you leave some for us? On the other side, the hale and hearty old man jumped out of his miniature Gundam. In his hand was a tang sword that was glowing with rainbow light. This was his true weapon. From the way he held the sword, Qin Guang could tell that the old man was an inner strength warrior. He was a master swordsman. However, the old man was different from his subordinates in the Guangdong headquarters. He was a reclusive civilian expert. Besides being an inner strength warrior, he was also a high-ranking official. Who knows if there are any traps at the end of the mission? Will the mission be judged as a failure if the contribution points aren't up to standard? The elf archer beside peasant wielded her bow and walked forward. She said, the explosion on the blood pigeon's back was caused by you, right? Shouldn't you at least give us some damage? The other human players nodded in agreement. Based on the power of the previous explosion and the fact that the blood pigeon was on the verge of death, the explosion should have taken away at least 40% of the total damage. If they didn't get more contribution points, the boss's rewards would be given to Yu Ting and Weatheny. Previously, the Celestials were powerful, so they were thankful that Yu Ting didn't lead the Celestials to massacre the mortals. Now there were only 2 Celestials left. They must have expended a lot of energy fighting the blood pigeon. It was time to shed all pretense of cordiality. In an instant, Yu Ting felt several forces lock onto his back at the same time. However, he showed no fear. Instead, he sneered and turned around to look at everyone. What? Do you think I'm afraid of you? There's nothing to be afraid of. Just scram, the middle school student said calmly. The large pike in his hand started to emit a loud bang. In the blink of an eye, there was a loud bang. He suddenly pulled the trigger, and an emerald green light shot out from the black muzzle, heading straight for Yu Ting. The light didn't hit Yu Ting. A ring of lightning appeared in front of Yu Ting. The light cannon of prototype number 1 shot into the ring, but it didn't penetrate the ring. Instead, it disappeared mysteriously. Upon closer inspection, one could see that there were countless tiny electric arcs extending from the ring of thunder and lightning and connecting to the beam of light shot out by Machine 1. Apart from that, the ring of lightning was also spinning at a speed equivalent to the speed of light. Yu Ting had actually used such a move to absorb the beam cannon of robot number 1. I've said that you're just lowly mortals. Even if the Celestials are only me and Weatheny, you can't afford to offend us, Yu Ting said. Yu Ting said. In the next instant, he had already appeared in the void above Space Shuttle number 1, looking down at the huge fellow. He looked through the mask at the middle school student, whose body was connected to nerves. How is this possible? The middle school student shouted in fear. Lad, you'll never understand what it means to control the power of lightning. Yu Ting calmly raised his hand. The sound of thunder in his palm was deafening. If one had to calculate the power of the thunder in his hand, it would be equivalent to the amount of thunder on Earth for an entire year. At that moment, his body shook violently and his arm exploded. Only after his arm exploded did a pitch-black arrow fly out from his hand. This was the time acceleration magical arrow shot by Peasant and the archer. The lightning that Yu Ting had planned to strike plane number 1 exploded with a loud bang. The dazzling lightning scattered and then rained down on plane number 1. At the same time, the old man and his 2 companions disappeared. When they reappeared, they were already in front of plane number 1. The old man was carrying the middle school student, who was emitting black smoke. His life was uncertain. Yu Ting didn't care about the old man and his companions. Instead, he looked at Peasant and his 2 companions. Yu Ting felt that Peasant and his companions were the greatest threat to him. Peasant felt that the situation was not good. He wanted to escape with the other 2 companions, but he tripped and fell to the ground. The 3 of them looked down. Their feet were covered by 3 lumps of soft mud. Further away, Withany looked at the 3 of them with a smug expression. She opened her palms slightly and aimed in their direction. This was clearly her handiwork. In the blink of an eye, Yu Ting was above the 3 of them. His expression was cold. Lightning flowed on his severed right hand, and it was regrowing rapidly. He raised the lightning spear in his left hand and slashed at the 3 of them. He was going to slash them at the waist. At this moment, the girl on Peasant's left pulled her leg out. Peasant turned the hourglass in his hand, and the sand inside fell to the ground. Yu Ting and the lightning around him suddenly stopped moving. On the other side, the girl who hadn't done anything before didn't attack Yu Ting, who had been frozen in time, after she pulled her leg out from the ground. She punched at Qin Guang, who was pretending to be dead on the ground tens of meters away. Just when Qin Guang was watching the show, he suffered an undeserved calamity. He was punched in the butt by that girl. He couldn't call it buttocks. His blood pigeon's back was gone, including his buttocks. He cursed in his heart, "Are you crazy? Yu Ting is the one who wants to kill you. Why did you hit me?" That wasn't the end. After the girl punched the blood pigeon's buttocks, she stirred the flesh. Qin Guang's mouth twitched. If he wasn't pretending to be dead, he would have cursed the girl. "Wait, you're so far away. How did you punch me?" This thought flashed in Qin Guang's mind and his eyes widened. If he didn't remember wrongly, this scene seemed familiar. Qin Guang glanced sideways and saw that the girl was standing still, but her fist was retreating from his buttocks. Rubber person? Bloody rubber person? While he was complaining, the girl's fist had already retracted at an extremely fast speed. Then she swung her right arm and her blood-stained right fist shot towards Yu Ting like a cannonball. She shouted even louder, "Go to hell. Rubber doesn't conduct electricity." Qin Guang was stunned. Gosh, fortunately he didn't give up on Peasant and the girl beside her. According to the nature of the heavenly Holy Grail, if he wasn't wrong, this girl who had hidden herself quite well was most likely Sister Lu Fei. Wasn't this the ability of the rubber fruit? Her awakened ability was to transform into rubber. It was no wonder she didn't use it previously. As she shouted, her fist covered in Qin Guang's pigeon blood slammed into Yu Ting's chest. Chapter 1203. Yu Ting screamed in pain as he flew backward. Rubber Girl revealed a joyful expression and said, "It's just as I thought. Ordinary attacks will be dodged by his lightning-transformed body, but the pigeon blood has the effect of breaking magic, so he can't dodge." Qin Guang, who was pretending to be dead as he watched the 2 factions kill each other, cursed inwardly. It wasn't pigeon's blood that dispelled demons, it was dog's blood. Pigeon's blood was a great supplement. Yu Ting was severely injured. Vithany saw that the situation was dire and turned to flee. She and Yu Ting, who was vomiting blood, retreated far away. "Lord Yu Ting, are you all right?" Vithany asked anxiously. Yu Ting wiped the blood from his lips and shook his head. "I'm fine." As they conversed, Vithany stuffed a bottle of healing potion into Yu Ting's hand. He had indeed sustained serious injuries. On the other side, the genius high school student woke up from his coma. When he opened his eyes, he saw himself in the arms of the old man. He struggled to free himself and turned his face to the side. After a long time he said, "Thank you." The old man smiled and patted his shoulder. "You're not as cold as you look." The high school student shrugged his shoulders. "In this mission space we aren't our true selves. Many people have different personalities on the internet and in real life. This is the same." The old man smiled and said, "That's because you're still young and haven't seen through your life. Let's not talk about this now. We should do something more meaningful." The high school student looked at Yu Ting, who was recuperating in the distance. He then looked at the motionless blood pigeon on the ground. Peasant, Rubber Lady, and the elven archer walked over. At this moment, the remaining 7 human players finally let go of their grudges and united as one. The elven archer asked, "Do we kill Blood Pigeon or the Protoss first?" The high school student thought for a while and said, "Let's kill Yu Ting first. Otherwise he won't let us deal with Blood Pigeon. I don't know if you've played online games before. Let me explain. The relationship between Yu Ting and the Protoss is like that of two opposing factions in an online game. This is only the first instance where we've fought against each other. They're just like us newbie accounts. It's just that their starting point is stronger than ours. That's why we were so passive in the beginning, allowing them to slaughter so many of our companions. However, this game has a certain degree of balance. While it gave us a poor starting setting, it also gave us humans faster advancement and more varied abilities. The foundation of all of this was built on the creativity of mortals. Our creativity in this world of missions can open up endless possibilities for us. As for these Protoss, have you noticed? Although they have also undergone an awakening, their abilities have not changed qualitatively from the beginning. The old man asked with great interest. Qualitative change? The middle school student nodded. Yes, a qualitative change. I'm not saying that they aren't getting stronger. What I mean is that their so-called awakening is simply a constant strengthening within the same scope. Considering their race and the changes in their abilities, I feel that their awakening is equivalent to removing the seal on their bodies. The female elf archer asked, doesn't this mean that they can obtain power more easily than us? Peasant nodded and said, that's correct. They can master their awakening powers faster than us because it's just a recovery process. The middle school student nodded and said, yes, so I suggest killing Yu Ting. Though I don't know why we were chosen for this mission, I feel that this matter won't end easily. This is a game, but it could also be a war. We can't let the Protoss gain the upper hand. Even if we survive this time, what about the next time? The Protoss are already stronger than us. If the final boss's rewards are generous, we'll perish in the hands of the Protoss. When everyone heard this, although they had different expressions, they all agreed with the high school student's words. Fellow human gamers, you seem to have forgotten something. I won't die that easily. Don't you find the blood pigeon strange? It isn't dead, but it hasn't moved for a long time. If the two of us continue to be entangled like this, and if this blood pigeon really has something fishy about it, then it will be too late for you to regret. At that moment, Yu Ting finally spoke up from afar. That's right. If Lord Yu Ting hadn't exchanged for the world without pigeon formation, all of you would have perished. Moreover, we injured the blood pigeon and you only know how to take advantage of the situation. Now you want to kill Lord Yu Ting and me? Don't you feel ashamed? Vesini, who was at the side, scolded loudly. The hale and hearty elders snorted and said, when you killed our comrades, you didn't reason with us. Every human gamer has unique abilities. Perhaps some of the human gamers that you killed had the ability to deal with the blood pigeon. That way we could have easily cleared the instance dungeon. That's right. Now that you're about to die, you want to negotiate with us? Rubber Girl clenched her fists and walked forward. After that punch earlier, her confidence had increased tremendously. To complement her methods, the middle school student had even secretly stuffed a rice cooker's inner into her hand while the group was chatting. What was the use of a rice cooker's inner? The authoritative expert in playing dead, Qin Guang, answered this question. About 30 seconds ago, someone scooped a bowl of rice cooker's blood from his butt. Someone would definitely ask, why do you have so much blood? You've been bleeding for a few minutes, so why aren't you dead? The authoritative expert in playing dead said, please read my name carefully. Repeat after me, blood. Pigeon, blood, understood? As Rubber Girl spoke, she dipped her right fist into the rice cooker's inner. Those who didn't know better would think that she was dipping her fist into sauce. Qin Guang, who benefited the most from the current situation, was obviously happy to see this happen. Up until now, the injury on his back had mostly healed. Well, to be precise, his entire back was gone, so he didn't have any injuries at all. All he did was use what was left of his body as a foundation to regrow his skin and reconstruct his internal organs. This didn't mean that the blood pigeon had invincible regenerative abilities comparable to the earth bean bomb. This was the blood pigeon's innate ability, blood transformation. It could liquefy all the blood in his body and reconstruct it. It was a pity that the part that Yu Ting had blown up was completely gone and couldn't be restored. The blood that was gushing out of his back like a fountain was actually his own doing. He pretended to be in a terrible state so that the players would let their guard down and buy more time for himself. Even though his wound had healed, it was still extremely serious. It could even be said that his bones were damaged. Regardless of whether it was the back of a human or a bird, the spine was the same. A human without a spine couldn't stand, and a bird without a spine was the same. Right now, he was essentially no different from a mollusk. If he really wanted to move, he could only crawl on the ground like a snake. In his current state, he couldn't kill any of the gamers. Right now, he was trying his best to use the effects of blood transformation and solidification. He was trying to crystallize a usable spine in his body. As for how to deal with the gamers, Qin Guang had made up his mind after returning to the slaughtering world. Even if you're stronger, you'll have to pay an unbearable price to kill us. How about this? I promise you that you can deal with the blood pigeon boldly. We won't interfere. Unless you're faced with an unsolvable situation and ask for my help. No matter what, this is only the first mission. We'll talk about the future in the future. Do you want to complete this mission safely? Yu Ting made another promise. Ridiculous. Why should we believe you? Peasant squinted his eyes and said, I don't care if you believe me or not. I can only tell you that the blood pigeon has recovered. Wethany, who was standing beside Yu Ting, suddenly interjected. Along with her words, the ground beneath Qin Guang suddenly trembled and flipped him over like a spatula frying vegetables. The blood covering Qin Guang's body flowed down, revealing his newly grown skin. There were no feathers on it, and it looked like the back of a graceful lady. Qin Guang's body twisted in the air. His wings were on the ground, and his claws were clasped together. He looked like a cartilaginous reptile. He sprawled on the ground again, his mouth gurgling as though he was in a miserable state. This time nobody believed him. The human gamers saw that the situation was not in their favor, and they made a decision immediately. The hale and hearty elder shouted, Good, we'll believe you. Don't delay attack. Following the old man's order, the others rushed forward one after another. This time it could be said that everyone had brought out their trump cards. The old man raised his long tang saber and dashed toward Shuigu with a few flashes on the ground. Surprisingly, he used the earth-shrinking technique and dashed toward her with his saber. On the other side, the genius high school student patted his chest heavily and clenched his fists. As his hands glowed, figurines rushed out from the light. The figurines expanded with the wind and transformed into the size of a normal human. Qin Guang stared with his eyes wide open. No wonder he could summon Robot Number 1. He was definitely an anime fanatic. What did I see? Fourth Hokage. Orochimaru. Ichigo Shinozaki. Saber. Overlord's pill. These 5 figurines that had transformed into summon characters looked no different from real people. They rushed towards Blood Pigeon in unison. The female elven archer slowly drew her longbow, but this time she did not release the bowstring immediately. Around her longbow, countless mysterious energies were born out of the void, forming spirals and condensing around it. The energies were colorful, and the magic arrow on the longbow became thicker and thicker. The wind howled, and the sand and pebbles in the Colosseum flew in all directions. Receive the wrath of the Elven King. The archer let out a loud roar. Peasant, who was at the side, shot out a ray of dark light. It was the time acceleration ability that hit the magic arrow. Qin Guang stared. The old man was in danger. Chapter 1204. Out of everyone present, only Rubber Girl did not make a move against him. It was not that Rubber Girl did not have the heart to do so, but rather, everyone still did not trust Yu Ting. They had specifically asked her, who had the ability to restrain Yu Ting, to keep an eye on him and not give him any opportunities. Yu Ting didn't break his promise. He just stood there obediently with Wethany. In the blink of an eye, the old man was the first to reach a distance of about 2 feet from the blood pigeon. However, he did not completely approach it. Instead, he suddenly paused on the spot and swung his long saber downwards, slashing at the air. A crescent-shaped saber light appeared along with his movements, and it swept across the ground with a swishing of sparks. Qin Guang knew he couldn't keep up the act. His stomach bulged, and he spat out a mouthful of blood gas that collided with the elderly man's sword light. A formless shockwave swept up a cloud of dust. In the blink of an eye, 5 figures broke through the dust and flew toward Blood Pigeon. They were the 5 figurines that the middle-aged man had summoned. These 5 figurines weren't the real deal. Fourth Hokage ran forward while he conjured a Rasengan and pressed it against Blood Pigeon's head. Orochimaru didn't have a Kusanagi sword. Instead, he held a Japanese samurai sword. Shinozaki Ichigo's broadsword looked like a figurine, but upon closer inspection, it wasn't sharpened. Instead, there was a blue flame on his hand. It looked like Iori Yagami, who was about to throw a wine glass. There's something wrong with your figurines? Rubber Gal couldn't help but complain. The middle-aged man blushed and explained, my ability is creation, but I haven't mastered it yet. While the two of them were chatting, the attacks from the 5 figurines had already landed in front of Blood Pigeon. Qin Guang swung his head in a circle, causing the feathers on his head to scatter before flying towards him and forming into a thin, yet sturdy shield that blocked the attacks of the 5 figurines and even blocked the sniper and beam gun fired by the 2 old geezers. He didn't have a chance to rest. With the combined attack of Peasant and the elf archers, the legendary Elven King's Wrath of the Time acceleration sword flew in front of him. The magic arrow was about 3 meters long and 2 feet thick. It looked more like a battering ram than an arrow. It smashed through the feather shield on top of Blood Pigeon's head and continued to move forward, heading straight for Blood Pigeon's head. Qin Guang's eyes widened in anger. What kind of joke was this? Did he really want his life? If he was hit in the head by this thing, he would either be stabbed to death or knocked to death. It seemed like he could only use his ultimate move. The Blood Pigeon let out a shrill cry, and a silk cloth suddenly appeared in front of its head. The silk grew in the wind and wrapped around the Elven King's Fury arrow. Soon after, it twisted and wrapped around the Elven King's Fury arrow like a dumpling wrapper. In the blink of an eye, a muffled explosion resounded, and the brocade-wrapped siege hammer suddenly exploded. The silk was constantly being stretched and countless cracks appeared on it. Streams of raging flames shot out from the cracks. Even though the scene was still terrifying, the power of the arrow was almost completely worn down. Oh my god! What kind of move is that? The elf archer gaped in astonishment. Just as she was speaking, the silk wrapped around the giant arrow exploded with a loud bang, turning into raging flames that shot into the sky and continued to rush forward. On the other hand, Qin Guang controlled the Blood Pigeon to roll on the ground to avoid the flames. The other gamers were dumbfounded. The slower pirated figurine couldn't dodge in time and was burned by the raging flame. In an instant, half of its body was incinerated. The power of the flames was evident. Blood Pigeon's head and back were also burned. Wherever the flames went, the blood feather was incinerated. Even the flesh underneath was peeled off and fell to the ground. It looked terrible, but Blood Pigeon managed to escape. It was just that it had become a vulture. On the other side, the hale and hearty old man, who had retreated in time, wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and turned to the archer beside him. The power of your magic arrow is too terrifying. If I hadn't reacted fast enough, I would have been injured. Next time, you should have warned me before you used your ultimate move. The genius high school student looked at his burnt figurine and felt his heart ache. The archer explained helplessly, "You can't blame me. I didn't expect it to have such a move. Also, there won't be a next time. The Elven King's Fury is my ultimate move. The cooldown time is too long." Look, what's this? While they were chatting, Rubber Girl took out a piece of rag. The rag was about a meter long and wide, and there were burn marks on the edges. It seemed to be part of the silk cloth that had wrapped the Elven King's Fury arrow. Looking at the words that were left on the rag, everyone was speechless. If they weren't mistaken, it was a Chinese character. This is the word book? Rubber Girl asked again. I saw the rag floating by just now, so I took it down to see if there was anything special about it. But this is clearly magic used by the Phantom Beast. Why would there be Chinese characters? And it's a book? Qin Guang, who was lying on the ground, chuckled inwardly as he regrown his skin and regrown his spine. You guys know nothing. I told you I was a dove, but you guys didn't believe me. Now I'm telling you that I'm actually a messenger pigeon, but you guys won't believe me either. The old man's move was called a letter to home. The itch on his back was getting stronger and stronger. Qin Guang was secretly delighted. Soon I can finally raise my head and be a man again. Oh no, a bird. In short, as long as the spine was regenerated, even if he couldn't fly because of the severe muscle loss, he could at least stand up and fight like a human. Unfortunately, the human players didn't give him enough time. Although there was a brief uproar because of the letter, they only exchanged a few words before charging at him again. I'll think of another way. You can attack first. Peasant didn't attack together with the archer. Instead, she stood at the same spot with a heavy heart. She felt that something was amiss. She was puzzled, but the situation was changing too quickly. She didn't have enough time to think, so she wasn't able to calm down and think carefully. Since the archer didn't have any more powerful moves, it was better to let the others test the waters. Sister Peasant, what's your plan? The elf archer asked as he knocked his arrow. Peasant scratched his head and said, This phantom beast is more tenacious than we imagined. If we don't think of other ways, we won't be able to kill it. You're right. Be careful. I'll go up first. The closer it is, the more powerful it will be. The archer nodded and charged forward. When they started fighting again, Peasant focused on the movements of the blood pigeon. The blood pigeon, which looked more like a reptile than a bird, rolled left and right on the ground. Occasionally, it spat out air bombs and feathers. It was that tenacious. The blood pigeon's movements were like a human's. Peasant recalled the words that it had written on the ground and the word book. She was puzzled. Unlike the others, she felt that the boss was Mr. Dang. It was a pity that nobody believed her. In this place, Everyone had a simple cooperative relationship with each other. The trust between people was not that strong, and she was not in any position to forcibly change the minds of others. Even she herself had wavered a few times. It was only when she saw the word book that her previous doubts returned to her heart. Under everyone's attacks, Qin Guang's situation was getting more and more difficult. Although he was trying his best to resist, the fact that he couldn't straighten his back had greatly affected him. Using unorthodox techniques allowed him to avert danger, but he couldn't seize the opportunity to attack. Even though he had relaxed and intended to kill, he couldn't kill the boss even if he wanted to. This boss is pitiful. It was unknown when Rubber Gal came to Peasant's side. Peasant hummed and said, I feel that, maybe it's Mr. Dang? Rubber Gal guessed Peasant's thoughts. It's possible. But we have no choice. If we don't kill it, we'll die. Have you thought that it's not only Mr. Dang but it's also a famous person? Rubber Gal was puzzled as she asked, famous outside? Then her eyes lit up and she stomped her foot. Gosh, why didn't I think of that? I'm silly. What's wrong? Rubber Gal had a complicated expression. No, nothing. She muttered to herself, this unlucky B***starred, what should I do? What do you know? Peasant was anxious. Rubber Gal gritted her teeth and said, I was silly. I came here suddenly and my thoughts were chaotic. I didn't notice such a simple problem. Now that you reminded me, I'm able to react. Forget it, I'm 100% sure Blood Pigeon is Mr. Dang. How can you be so sure? It was Peasant who couldn't make up his mind. Rubber Gal rolled her eyes and thought, can I tell you? Qin Guang, is there something wrong with you? Why did you suddenly become a boss? Just as Qin Guang had guessed, Rubber Gal was Sister Lu Fei. Why was she Rubber Gal? The reason was very simple. Lu's chemical industry was involved in a variety of chemical industries. In addition to mining, it also involved a lot of rubber industries. The branch company that Lu Fei was previously in charge of was one of the top 5 rubber raw material processing enterprises in China. Lu Fei knew Grand Magus right and knew that Qin Guang wasn't an ordinary person. Combining this with the current situation, she instantly guessed the relationship between Qin Guang, Mr. Dang, and Blood Pigeon. Previously, in her heart, Qin Guang, as the great Magister right, was a mage from the Dolua world that he mentioned. This time, she thought that she had been involved in another abnormal situation. Although it was inconceivable, the experienced roughie was not particularly flustered. She had relied on her own ability to play the pig to eat the tiger all the way until now, successfully becoming the strongest player against the Protoss. She was still thinking of showing off to Qin Guang after this matter was over. Weren't you unwilling to teach me magic? Now I have my own arcana. Though it was awkward for a female to become a Rubber Gal, wasn't it better than nothing? Luffy, who had once watched One Piece and learned the entire Rubber Man battle strategy from the protagonist of the same name, Luffy, wasn't flustered at all. But now she was flustered. Don't ask me why, it's too late to explain. Really, believe me, this is Mr. Dang. I can swear to you. What do we do now? Lu Fei didn't care how Mr. Dang died. But if it was Qin Guang, it would be a different story. You know he's Qin Guang? You mean that super internet celebrity Almighty Superman? Peasant suddenly asked softly. Lu Fei trembled before she helplessly nodded her head. I'm 99% certain that he's Qin Guang. Why do you think he's Dang? It was hard to pronounce, but Peasant understood. Peasant shook his head and said, I can't tell you, but that's what I think. Lu Fei nodded and said, forget it, let's not think about this. We have to convince the others. I don't believe Qin Guang will kill us. He must have guessed who I am. Peasant asked, yes, will the others be able to guess it? Lu Fei shook her head and said, impossible, the others don't understand him. How can they link two people with different appearances? Peasant asked coldly, are you one of his people? Do you understand him? Lu Fei grinned and said, aren't you the same? You are? Lu Fei didn't answer and said, let's talk after we get out of here. We'll look for him together. Don't worry, as long as he's around, we can turn misfortunes into blessings. I understand him. As he spoke, Lu Fei recalled what happened when he destroyed the World Breaker. He was capable of unleashing such devastating power. There was no way he would be stumped by becoming a boss. Lu Fei guessed half of it. In terms of destructive power and the scope of the mission, the world of slaughter wasn't comparable to the world of punishment from the world of destruction. But in terms of the level of the world within a cup and the laws that Qin Guang had come into contact with, the world of slaughter was much higher than the world of punishment. I think I have a way to prove that he's one of us, Peasant said with determination. Lu Fei was puzzled as Peasant ran forward. Luffy was puzzled, but Peasant ran forward with big strides. What's she trying to do? While Lu Fei was in a daze, Peasant was less than 10 meters away from the blood pigeon. She raised the hourglass with her right hand and said calmly, "If she's Mr. Dang, she won't attack me." What? You're crazy. Peasant, what are you doing? Everyone stop her. Isn't she seeking death? Lu Fei was shocked, and the other players were even more dumbfounded and panicked. They were on the same side. If they were to fight against the Celestials or the mythical beast, Peasant's time manipulation was crucial. Everyone had a good impression of her. Besides the Celestials, nobody wanted to see her die. But it was too late. The gamers didn't expect Qin Guang to be the most flustered. Just now, he flapped his wings with the intention of launching a sea of blood to send the gamers flying to buy time. He didn't think much of Peasant's approach because he knew that Peasant wasn't suited to be near him. He thought Peasant was going to throw the time manipulation from afar to slow down and increase the strength of the sea of blood. Peasant charged forward. His blood sea had surged forward like a tidal wave, and he couldn't retract it. Qin Guang was burning with anxiety. What a troublemaker. I don't care if the others die, but I don't want you to die. Chapter 12:05. Peasant took 2 steps forward and saw the oncoming sea of blood. At this moment she had 2 choices. One was to use her time ability to slow down the sea of blood in front of her, and the other was to accelerate herself before turning around and running. Or she could continue to run against the power of the sea of blood and prove to the others that the magical beast was Mr. Dang. Peasant pondered for less than a second. Then, under the bewildered gazes of everyone, she took a step forward and dived into the blood sea. She felt that she couldn't retreat. This was her last chance to convince the others. Like Rubber Gal, Peasant guessed that Mr. Dang's identity was Qin Guang. She also thought that Qin Guang recognized her. In that case he would definitely not kill her, nor would he kill Rubber Girl. However, he was not so merciful to the others. There were only 7 human players left. In other words, other than himself and Rubber Gal, the rest were within the range of his ability to kill, just like the people who had died in his hands before. There were still many humans. If 1 or 2 of them died, the humans wouldn't have such deep feelings. But now, those who didn't fit in with the group and might become hidden dangers in the future were all dead. Although the remaining people didn't form a team from the beginning, they had already recognized each other since dawn was coming. Every surviving human player would become a valuable resource for their faction in the future. No one wanted to see their comrades sacrificed again. Therefore, as long as Shui Ying killed another person, no matter how he explained, no one would believe him. At that time, apart from himself and Rubber Girl, everyone else would die. As for Yu Ting and Vasani, they looked like they were at the end of their tether. But until the last moment, no one knew if the cunning Protoss had any other trump cards up their sleeves. Hence, she couldn't allow any more humans to die. Peasant was engulfed by the sea of blood in the blink of an eye. However, she did not completely let go of her defenses. The hourglass was spinning frantically, forming a thin layer of protective film on the surface of her combat uniform. The blood that came into contact with this protective film quickly dried up and aged. Not only that, the improved version of the Elven Rattan armor on her body also released a layer of energy barrier, embedded between the protective membrane of time and the Rattan armor, resisting the impact of the blood that penetrated through. As time passed, the 2 energy barriers were quickly broken. Streaks of dark red blood swept past her combat uniform, like a sharp blade cutting through paper, leaving behind one wound after another on her thighs, abdomen, arms, and other parts of her body. Qin Guang, who was in the form of a blood pigeon, could only watch helplessly. He was already desperately trying to think of a way to retract the corrosive and cutting power of the blood sea, but as the saying goes, spilled water can't be taken back easily. How could he retract his ultimate move just because he wanted to? Unfortunately, he couldn't speak at the moment. He could only stare helplessly at everything that was happening with his pigeon eyes. Is there a hole in your brain? Are you an idiot or what? I don't want to kill you, but you're courting death. What do you want me to do? At the back of the crowd, Lu Fei, who knew Peasant's motive, was watching nervously. She was observing Blood Pigeon's situation and Peasant's situation. Just as the 2 of them had guessed, Blood Pigeon's human-like eyes revealed a hint of panic. He didn't want to kill Peasant. Lu Fei was in deep thought. Things were getting out of control. If everything was under Blood Pigeon's control, he wouldn't be panicking. Could it be that he was unable to control the gushing blood? Lu Fei gritted her teeth and couldn't be bothered to monitor Yu Ting. She took a step forward and punched with her rubber bullet fist at the spot where Peasant had plunged into the sea of blood. Wherever the fist landed, the red blood flowed, But Lu Fei's powerful rubber bullet only penetrated less than half a meter into the sea of blood before it retreated helplessly. The blood looked fluid, but it was extremely dense and corrosive. On the other side, the other gamers stopped attacking and focused on rescuing Peasant. Of course, the attacks that they had launched earlier were all blocked. For example, the one-punch Superman, Saitama, who was summoned by the high school student, gave Qin Guang a fright. After taking a closer look, Qin Guang calmed down. Saitama's figurine was a pirated one, and there was a small tuft of hair on his head. The pirated figurine punched out, but before it could exert any power, it was engulfed by a wave of the sea of blood and disappeared. The magic arrows shot by the archers weren't effective either. Without Peasant's time acceleration, the magic arrows couldn't reach the sea of blood. The slightest splash in the sea of blood would cause the magic arrows to explode. Though Peasant, who was trapped in the sea of blood, had his suspicions confirmed, he didn't expect the sea of blood to be so powerful. She squeezed the hourglass in her hand helplessly. Then she gritted her teeth and threw it out. As the hourglass left her hand, it was swept away by the sea of blood. In the blink of an eye, the hourglass trembled violently. No matter how the hourglass shook, the sand that would seep down in an orderly manner suddenly went out of control. In the small hourglass, countless extremely fine grains of sand of time created a feeling of a sandstorm in this narrow space. Suddenly, Peasant clenched her right fist, and the indestructible hourglass that was swept a few meters in front of her cracked. The body of the hourglass wasn't made of ordinary glass. It contained the power of the rules and was a dimension barrier that could isolate the invasion of time and space. Then Peasant said in her heart, "Time storm." As her voice fell, the cracks on the hourglass in the distance rapidly spread. A strange cracking sound reverberated throughout the entire Colosseum. Though the sound wasn't loud, it sounded as though it was right beside everyone's ears. In the blink of an eye, an orange-yellow sandstorm engulfed the area where the hourglass exploded. The grains of sand in the hourglass were only the weight of a fist, but now, it became an earth-shattering sandstorm. The grains of sand flew in all directions with heavy historical vicissitudes. Wherever the grains of sand passed, the sea of blood dried up and the land cracked. The concept of time and space was broken. Peasant took the chance to escape. As for Qin Guang, he felt relieved when he saw that his blood ocean technique was broken. Though he was in the middle of the time sandstorm tornado, as a mythical beast boss, he wouldn't die of old age no matter how Peasant accelerated or slowed down time. He didn't panic. However, his complacency didn't last long. A moment later, a look of horror appeared on his face. Peasant had lost control of the power of the hourglass. The sandstorm that was about to soar into the sky suddenly spun in the opposite direction after exceeding a certain limit. Then the sand converged again. Peasant was surrounded by the other gamers. "What are you thinking? Do you want to die? We said that even if he's a mister, we can't do anything about it. You almost died just now. Can you exchange for the hourglass?" Peasant wasn't bothered by the criticism or concern of the gamers. He looked ahead nervously. After the hourglass exploded, she didn't know what would happen next. When she saw the sandstorm reverse, she was shocked. "This time, what's wrong?" Ruffy asked nervously. Peasant replied, "Time is turning back." In the distance, the sandstorm gradually became smaller and smaller. Then it converged at Blood Pigeon's side. The sea of blood, which had already dried up, became liquid once again. The gamers could see the human-shaped hole in the sea of blood where Peasant was. All this took a long time to describe, but in the blink of an eye, the sandstorm in the sky suddenly disappeared. Blood Pigeon lay quietly on the ground. He maintained the posture of flapping his wings to blast out of the sea of blood. Under the effect of time reversal, his sure-kill sea of blood had also returned to his body. "Where's your hourglass? If you can turn back time, your hourglass should be able to appear again." The middle schooler asked bewilderedly. "Over there." The sharp-eyed elf archer pointed at the shattered glass on the ground and shouted in surprise. The hourglass didn't regenerate? Peasant didn't understand what was going on. Ruffy was puzzled and asked, "Where's the sand? Where's the sand of time?" Peasant thought for a while and said, "Perhaps, when the sea of blood returned to his body, it was brought into his body?" Perhaps only Qin Guang knew what he was feeling at this moment. As a bird, no, a dove, using the power of blood as a guide, he should be a domineering devil. It was a pity that the enemy was too powerful and he didn't hold back. He was raped until now. It wasn't easy for him to figure out a way, but he didn't have the chance to try it. Then he almost killed someone he didn't want to kill. Now, something even stranger happened. His body was stuffed with sand. He felt like a duck waiting to be sold in the market. His stomach was filled with sand. But his previous self was the earth-paced exploder. He was the strongest earth elemental creature. He couldn't be poisoned by the sand, right? As he was thinking, the sand of time in his stomach released the power of time. Qin Guang swallowed his saliva. Things were getting more and more troublesome. Chapter 1206. Intense pain came from his body, and Qin Guang could clearly sense that every single cell in his body was being corroded by time. Some cells were regaining their youth, some were aging rapidly, and some were at a loss of where to go. Every cell seemed to have its own thoughts, and they were thinking about life. Who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? At this moment, the thoughts formed from 10,000 nerve endings were cursing in Qin Guang's heart. It wasn't that his stomach was stuffed with sand, but that the damned sand of time had entered his body along with his blood and entered his countless cells along with the power of his blood. If he had to use scientific theories to explain his current situation, that was the only conclusion Qin Guang could come up with. He admired himself. No matter how strange the situation was, he was still able to find support for himself with theories that seemed reliable but were actually completely unscientific. Fortunately, he wasn't treated as a scientist when he was young. Otherwise, he would be more of a Frankenstein than Nicole. The question was, what should he do? Should he die of old age, or should he be turned back into an egg by time? It was a dilemma. Death was something he could not allow to happen. Even if it was Peasant, he couldn't let her kill him. Otherwise he would be finished. But he couldn't live either. Otherwise the others would be finished. In the end he had to die, but how he died was very particular. He had to die with skill, depth, and integrity. He definitely couldn't be easily defeated like an ordinary game boss. At this moment, Qin Guang was feeling extremely weird. He felt uncomfortable, yet comfortable at the same time. The power of time couldn't kill him. In this strange bloodshed dimension, the blood pigeon had eternal life. He could only be killed by the gamers and not die of old age. In World of Warcraft, the gamers could enter the instance dungeon and hack for 10,000 years. As long as the power wasn't cut off, the boss would stand there forever. How could the gamers wait for the boss to die of old age? In addition, under the constant invasion of the misplaced power of time, some cells aged while others became more and more energetic. However, the aging and dying cells would not disappear. Instead, after crossing a certain boundary, they would quickly jolt back and return to the direction of rejuvenation. This was the state of his body at the moment. It was rather distorted. This is a good chance to kill him. The old man frowned and said, I don't know what happened, but Miss Peasant's hourglass injured him severely. We can't afford to lose this opportunity. Let's seize it. Wait. Peasant and Lu Fei shouted in unison. The two of you, although we belong to the same faction and have relied on your help before, at this critical moment of life and death, we really have no reason to be willful with you. We've said it many times. Even if it's really Mr. Dang, we still have to kill it. Otherwise we'll be the ones to die. You two might not be afraid of death, but that doesn't mean we're willing to die with you. A strong man behind the old man said in a low and muffled voice. His words were filled with dissatisfaction. Who wants to talk nonsense with you? Anyway, we said that we can't do it. If anyone is stubborn, don't blame me for being impolite. Lu Fei was infuriated. She glared angrily and extended her arm in front of everyone. Her arm was emitting white smoke and emitting pink radiance. The genius student gaped in shock. Gosh, second gear? Lu Fei grinned and said, Why? Do you know your stuff? Oh no. The bird is standing up. While they were dawdling, the blood pigeon that was sprawled on the ground suddenly screeched, giving everyone a fright. They stared at the blood pigeon that had been pretending to be a mollusk for a long time. The blood pigeon spread its wings and stood up with great difficulty. With the interference of the time sand, even though it was difficult, the Chen's peace pigeon had regained its spine after such a long time. But it didn't charge at Yu Ting or the humans. Instead it screeched again. Thick, viscous blood gushed out of its body. It looked like a fountain. Everyone thought it was going to unleash a powerful attack, but after a few screeches, the blood pigeon's huge body inexplicably collapsed. It's dead? What's going on? You ask me, but who am I supposed to ask? Who's going to go take a look? You. On the other side, Yu Ting and Wethany were also talking. Master Yu Ting, what should we do now? The blood pigeon is dying. It's not dead. Not only is it not dead, but its body is surging with new energy. I can feel it. It's as vigorous as the breath of the goddess of life. Then should we attack? If this phantom beast recovers to its peak, we won't have any chance of winning. It won't. The life force in its body looks terrifying, but it's like a castle in the air. My attack just now really did injure it. It's already at the end of its tether. Then should we? No, let's wait and see. I don't have much divine power left. Even my spirit is exhausted. So that's it. There's no rush. I have the speed of lightning. At the last moment, I can avoid the mortals and deal the final blow. These mortals are too naive. Nobody can stop the power of lightning. The blood pigeon will probably massacre the mortals and make them suffer. We can sit back and enjoy the fruits of his labor. My lord is wise. The mortals were perplexed. The blood pigeon, who was sprawled on the ground, started struggling violently as though he was in extreme pain. He started rolling on the ground. Peasant and Lu Fei were worried, but they couldn't help. The others were eager to give it a try. They really wanted to rush up and finish off their opponent, but Lu Fei was glaring at them fiercely. Peasant exclaimed in surprise. Oh my God. Lu Fei asked anxiously. What's wrong? She didn't dare to turn her head to look at the blood pigeon. She focused her gaze on the other gamers. Peasant covered his mouth and said, It laid an egg. What? Lu Fei's entire body trembled and she almost laughed out loud. Finally, she was willing to turn her face away. Just as Peasant said, the blood pigeon struggled for a while before it lost all signs of life. A 3-meter-long egg-shaped object popped out from between its legs. That was an egg. Is the blood pigeon female? The high school student asked. Right at that moment, the eggshell suddenly cracked open and a figure jumped out from within. Everyone be careful. The old man warned. Damn you, female. This isn't laying an egg. This is nirvana. Do you understand? This is nirvana. When the figure spoke, the gamers were taken aback. Then they were overjoyed. Qin Guang had transformed into a bald man and jumped out from the eggshell. The series of events made him feel as though he was on the brink of death. Previously, under the impact of the time sand, the cells in his body vibrated under the 2 states of acceleration and reversal. Finally, when a cell's time reversal exceeded its limit, the situation took a turn for the better. The small cell lost the characteristics of the blood pigeon due to the reversal of time. It reverted to a human cell in the form of another person. Then, the innate ability of the earth paste exploder appeared out of nowhere in this cell. In a flash, the natural ability regenerated itself and grew stronger. It pounced on the nearby cells and was able to resist the aging effects of the time sand. But that wasn't the end of it. Although the sand of time was a mystical tool that had the rules of time attached to it, it was essentially still within the realm of the earth element. The innate ability of the earth paste exploder swallowed the sand of time in one gulp. Of course, it did not let go of the law of time contained in it. However, Qin Guang couldn't control this matter, just like how he couldn't stop his heart from beating just by thinking about it. It was all driven by his instincts. This kind of innate ability that came from nothing, and the feeling of extremely strong and rapid recovery was simply too wonderful for words. But it wasn't without its disadvantages. The cells that were affected by the natural ability of the earth burner belonged to his human form, but the other cells in his body were different from humans. A human body was made up of both human and bird cells. It was like putting a bicycle chain on a supercar. It was very awkward. At the same time, Qin Guang had an absurd feeling. He was the final boss of the mission, the blood pigeon, but he was also a human player who participated in the mission. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, an indescribable idea flashed across his mind. He instantly made a decision. It was time to end things. Am I stupid? I'm a player too. I can kill the boss too. If I kill the boss, I'll complete the mission. So the slaughtering world has to let me live. Although I'm the boss, if the boss dies, I'll die too. However, such a brain-burning paradox should be left to the heavenly Holy Grail to make its own judgment. Previously, he was considering whether he should take the risk. Now that he had the regenerative ability of the earth burner, all his problems were resolved. Should he try to commit suicide? When the bystanders saw him stand up, they thought he had purposely positioned the 2 bodies so that the human cells would sink. At the same time, he detonated the power of the blood pigeon in his body. After successfully locating him, Qin Guang fell down again. The explosions in his body did not stop for even a moment, but under his deliberate control, all the power of the great earth exploder was concentrated in his lower body. Qin Guang first formed a hard shell for himself, and then stuffed all the innate abilities of the great earth exploder into it, reconstructing his body. Finally, he completed the nirvana process. He made the right bet. Congratulations, player at noon, for killing the blood pigeon and completing the mission. The reward distribution is as follows. At noon's damage is 45%, Yu Ting's damage is 31%. Yu Ting was dumbfounded. He was waiting to kill Steel. What was going on? Besides Lu Fei and Peasant, the other human gamers didn't fare any better. Mr. At Noon, who had disappeared for a long time, reappeared and the mission ended? What the hell happened? What was the point of coming to this mission space? If they were about to be teleported out, what was the point of distributing the reward points? Overall mission completion assessment, human wins. Just as everyone was lost in their thoughts, another notification sound rang out. Though they didn't know the benefits of the announcement, they were happy that their side had won. They didn't have time to greet each other. Swoosh, 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 they vanished. Qin Guang turned to look at Yu Ting and Wethany. They stared at each other from afar. Yu Ting and Wethany's figures also began to fade. It was just as they had said, they were just projections. After everyone left, a time and space vortex appeared above Qin Guang's head. He raised his head and slowly rose into the sky. He had too many questions in his heart that he wanted answers from Lioli. Chapter 1207. Luli, I think you have to give me an explanation. What exactly is going on right now? Looking at Luli, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground and pretending to be dead, Qin Guang asked. Luli ignored him and did not get up. She continued to sit there with an unperturbed look on her face. Also, why did the deer cry fruit disappear? What's going on? After that, Qin Guang pointed outside the Cloud City's walls. The massive plant that should have been standing there had disappeared without a trace. Hey. I'm talking to you very seriously, can you please be a little more serious? Seeing that Luli was still pretending to be oblivious to what was going on outside, Qin Guang could not help but reach out and push her. An inconceivable thing happened, he actually pushed the air. His palm went straight through Lioli's body and it even caused a ripple. The projection? Qin Guang was furious in his heart. Luli, come out. Don't try to hide from me. I know you're here. He shouted loudly. Alright, I'm really impressed by you. Finally, Luli's figure reappeared behind him. Qin Guang turned around and looked at her. You're finally willing to come out. After such a big change, you can't possibly not give me any explanation, right? Luli shrugged. If I tell you that I don't know what happened, will you be angered to death? Qin Guang clutched his chest. Before I die, I'll strangle you to death first. Alright, I was just joking with you. Listen to this, Empress, slowly. Seeing that he really had signs of collapsing, Luli quickly became serious. About 2 hours later, after Qin Guang and Luli had a long talk, he still left Cloud City with 10,000 dissatisfaction. Compared to before, Lioli's attitude had changed greatly. She was no longer so cold and arrogant. She often prayed for her own good fortune and said that there would always be a way out. She was indeed trying very hard to explain. This meant that the slaughter world this time had actually exceeded her expectations. This was indeed a situation that she did not understand. After losing contact with both parties, she did not stay idle. She was also doing her best to decipher and analyze the changes in the Holy Grail. But it was extremely embarrassing. Everything seemed to be the same as before, but the result was that other people in the divine race had entered the world in the cup. As for Yu Ting, Lioli also recognized him. He was indeed one of the top-ranked god emperors in the Endless God realm, and he was the sovereign of lightning. In addition, Luli did not know where Lu Ming had gone or what had happened. Just as the slaughtering world began, the huge deer cry flower that was growing outside Cloud City suddenly became illusory and then completely disappeared. Before this, there were no signs. Luli tried everything she could but was unable to communicate with Lu Ming. As for how the world in the cup would develop in the future, Lori gave a definite answer. There was no doubt that the Holy Grail had been upgraded, and the world in the cup would be at the level of the third layer, the Cloud Elephant Sky. But the appearance of the Divine Emperor Yu Ting and the other divine race indicated that the Holy Grail and the Endless God realm must have been forcibly established some kind of connection, allowing those divine race to descend into the mission world of the cup. Correspondingly, at the same time, perhaps because of the continuous integration of the real world and the real world that Qin Guang was in had also established a connection with the world in the cup. In order to achieve a certain degree of balance, the Holy Grail forcibly created two opposing camps. According to the normal setting, Qin Guang himself should be able to freely choose a camp to join. He would not be the boss that needed to kill all the players. This time there was just an accident and then it was forcibly restored. Perhaps it was because the Holy Grail was simple, or it could be due to the situation that happened in the 8th mission. The world in the cup simply made him the boss. The Holy Grail did not consider the emotional inclination of Qin Guang as a human. Because of this, Qin Guang's mind was even tortured to the point that he coincidentally took a walk outside. It was a blessing in disguise as he solved the problem of being a killer. Moreover, it made his mind more resilient, indirectly helping him to complete the process of turning into an egg. It could be said that he had turned misfortune into fortune and cleverly survived this crisis. But from the next world in the cup in the cloud elephant sky, it should have a more mature and complete camp and ability system from the start. The use and distribution of reward points should also be more rigorous. As for what would happen to those players who were reset, Luli also assured him. The divine race entered the world in the cup as a projection. Although the humans entered with their entire minds, the so-called reset was actually rewind. It allowed the players' memories to return to the moment before they entered. It was not a true death. For those who were rewound in the first mission, nothing would change. Perhaps they would only yawn in a trance, then feel a little dispirited, and continue doing what they were supposed to do. Or perhaps he was simply in a dream and didn't have the slightest bit of awareness. Luli was not sure what would happen to the 7 surviving gamers, but Qin Guang was not concerned. Peasant's suspected target was not far from him. The matter of the killer was settled, so he could drive back to the filming site to take a look. In addition, he could also call Sister Lu Fei now. If she remembered anything, she would not hide it from him. Qin Guang hoped that the gamers would retain their memories. He would definitely choose the humans so they would be able to help him in the future. In the Heavenly Holy Cup, where both sides fought for the fruit of victory, the benefits of the human race's victory would definitely be greater than the God race's victory. However, he was still a little worried. He was not sure if these people's abilities would be inherited in the real world. If that happened, with the supernatural abilities of the 7 gamers, things would get out of hand. Peasant and Sister Lu Fei were still within his control, but the other 5 gamers would cause a huge commotion and have an immeasurable impact. On second thought, there would be another quest, and more players would be chosen to participate in this quest. In the future, there would definitely be more and more players. Therefore, the entire world, it was hair-raising. Qin Guang quickly retreated from the world in the cup. When he regained his senses and opened his eyes, the car was still speeding on the highway. Not far ahead was a highway exit. As a young man of the new era, even though he was the god of racing, Qin Guang drove the car out of the highway before stopping by the roadside to make a call. He called Ruffy first. "Oh, you rascal, you finally remembered me. What's up? What's up? Why are you calling me so early in the morning? Didn't the internet say that you were filming a program?" When the call connected, Qin Guang didn't even have the time to speak before Lu Fei interrupted him with her words. Based on his understanding of Sister Lu Fei, she wasn't the real rubber girl. But this was impossible. In the world in the cup, he had exchanged a glance with her, and this matter was set in stone. When Qin Guang pretended to be dead on the ground, his ears didn't relax. He heard the conversation between Peasant and Lu Fei clearly. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so sure of their identities. Now that she spoke and knew that he wasn't a normal gamer, there was only one explanation. She couldn't remember anything like the gamers who were reset. If that was the case, surviving to the end of the mission or not didn't make a difference whether they would be reset or not. No, nothing. Oh yes, did anything special happen? Qin Guang asked unwillingly. Lu Fei snorted and said, "Why are you asking me? Your house was bombed. Don't you know?" "I know. Of course I know. Your side. It's fine. The martial arts expert you sent is connected to my house's security system. I'm safer than the President of the United States. Seriously, why did you let others put such a high bounty on your head? Do you know who did it?" Qin Guang was taken aback. Then he stomped his feet. "Gosh, I'm stupid. Why did he scold me? When I was in the state of consciousness, I killed so many assassins without any psychological pressure. Then I returned to the world in the cup, but I forgot something important. Why did I forget to find trouble with those fellows who offered bounties?" Counting with his fingers, Mei Zhonghong would definitely not be able to escape responsibility. Sanxing Group was most likely on the list. The motive of the Japanese financial group was also worth considering. Why didn't I think of going for a stroll? But he immediately felt relieved. At that time, although his search for the assassin organization seemed to be untraceable, in fact there was a pattern. He already knew the location of the potential targets of each assassin organization from the intelligence provided by the General Administration of Guangdong. Then, with a thought, the target of the assassin, which was his family and friends, would have a mysterious telepathic connection with him. Then, with this telepathic connection as a guide, he could appear next to the target of the assassin. At the same time, no matter how powerful the assassin was, they would always think about this matter, and then they would be captured by Qin Guang's mind. The expert who dared to accept this $400 million bounty would not be a lone ranger. There was a strong organization behind him that provided him with intelligence support. There would be another kind of telepathic connection between the two, which would also be captured by Qin Guang, who was in the soul state. When Qin Guang was searching for a target, he didn't deliberately choose the target. Instead, he would directly fly over when he sensed it, so sometimes he would directly float to the other party's nest. As for the organization that accepted the mission and the person who issued the mission, the connection between them wasn't that strong. Instead, the mission was directly issued and accepted through the two-way confidential dark web, so it wouldn't be automatically captured by Qin Guang at that time. Of course, if he chose to fly over at that time, he should have been able to find the person. Unfortunately, he was in the middle of the Slaughtering World mission at that time, and he was turned into a pigeon to be beaten. He was very busy and panicked, so he forgot. After crushing 27,638 souls with his own hands, he hurriedly returned. Now that Lu Fei reminded him, he remembered. But now that things had come to this, there was nothing to regret. Anyway, after this sudden change, there would no longer be any blind assassin in the world who would come to seek death. For a short period of time, he didn't need to worry about the safety of his family. The ones who should be afraid and worried should be the survivors, who hadn't been involved in the big pot of 400 million bounty. A weak organization that was originally ranked outside the top 500 in the world suddenly woke up and became the world's #1. Was it a surprise? Was it a surprise? Was it happy? Definitely not happy. Everyone would be more concerned about another question. Why did those big shots suddenly go crazy? What did they have in common? This common characteristic was very easy to find. They were all tempted by the 400 million bounty and took action, then they all went crazy. In addition, Qin Guang didn't intend to completely relax the security. He still had to go home to take a look and settle the situation at home. Then, of course, he had to find those people who put up the bounty to settle the score. But now he had other more important things to ask. No, you don't have to worry too much about the assassins for now. Just now, didn't anything strange happen in your mind? Qin Guang's question was very direct. Strange things? No, by the way, I accidentally spilled water on my clothes when I was drinking. Does that count? No, it's fine. Then I'll hang up first. After hanging up, Qin Guang turned the car around and drove in the direction of the set. Seeing him return, Chu Zijin, who was reshooting the show with the director, looked confused. Didn't you go home? Qin Guang looked down at his watch. There are still 2 hours before the plane leaves. I thought it would be useless to rush to the airport now, so I came back to take a look. Are you worried about the effect of the show? Is our show that important this time? Chu Zijin asked in surprise. Qin Guang laughed. Of course it's important. After all, this is Qinguang Media's first big project. The company also has $1 billion from the Shanghai Financial Group. If we don't get a good start, we won't be able to explain it to others. Chu Zijin nodded. I didn't do a good job. I took it for granted. The first 3 episodes should have been based on other people's successful experiences. Qin Guang waved his hand. It's not your fault. If it were me, I would have done the same. I don't have any experience in such a big investment project, so I couldn't give any useful advice. Chu Zijin secretly rolled her eyes. She only felt that she really couldn't understand this guy. If you really valued it so much, why did you mess up the shooting order before? I was already prepared to lower my standards for the 4th episode. Aren't you trying to trick me now? Chu Zijin felt a mouthful of blood in her chest, but she couldn't say anything. After all, he was the boss and he had given her enough trust and support in the first 3 episodes. In the end, the show that relied on his fame and the brand bonus didn't reach its goal, so they had no choice but to pull him in for the 4th episode. Although it was difficult for others to comply with his request, he was a big shot and he was the boss. No one had the right to say no. Okay, are you going to say hello to the others now? Or shoot another 2 scenes? Chu Zijin looked back at the set. The director was so angry that he was shouting. The guests who participated in the filming were complaining about how difficult it was to say their lines and make expressions to the air. Qin Guang looked down at his watch again. Forget it. I have to leave soon. Then what's the point of coming back? Chu Zijin looked confused. Qin Guang looked at her straight in the eyes. You really don't feel anything amiss? Chu Zijin nodded. Something is wrong. Qin Guang was overjoyed. Really? Do you remember what just happened? Just now. 15 minutes ago. Qin Guang pinched his fingers and counted. He had just come out of the massacre world 15 minutes ago. Chu Zijin pinched her chin and thought for a moment. At that time, Director Zhou said he wanted to reshoot a scene and asked me to arrange for someone to communicate with the Hercules from America. I had just called the people from the company over to explain something and then, as she thought about it, Chu Zijin suddenly clapped her hands. That's right, it's a little strange. I was just explaining it to them when I suddenly got distracted and stopped talking. When I came back to my senses, the staff was shocked and asked me if I was overtired. Qin Guang raised his eyebrows slightly. There's such a phenomenon? Chu Zijin rubbed the bridge of her nose. It's quite strange. You might not know this, but no matter what I do, as long as I want to do it wholeheartedly, I will never feel tired. It's even more impossible for me to get distracted while talking to others. That's why I'm always called a genius. I learn things quickly. As she spoke, she remembered who the person in front of her was. Well, she shouldn't have shown off in front of him. She was a genius, yes. But the boss in front of her was the grandmaster of geniuses. However, Qin Guang still understood what was going on and suddenly asked, "Oh, right. You used to have a pen name online, Chuhi Hanjia, right? Did you help me write a hydrology article? Did you help me clean up my mess?" Chu Zijin's eyes lit up. "Oh, how did you know? I thought no one would bring it up again. Did you read my article? How can that be called cleaning up your mess?" "I'm telling the truth." Qin Guang made an "oh" sound. "I understand. That's strange. You're a good girl. Why would you use a Chinese chess name?" Chu Zijin shrugged. "My surname is Chu. When I first registered my social media account, I was learning Chinese chess at the Chinese Qiyuan, so I casually used this name. Can't I? Okay, I understand. If there's nothing else, I'll make a move first. You carry on with your work." Qin Guang turned and left without dilly-dallying. According to Chu Zijin's words, it was as he had guessed. Chu Zijin was indeed a peasant. There was no way out. With Qin Guang's acting skills and sensitivity to other people's micro-expressions, he was 100% sure that Chu Zijin was not lying. There was only one explanation. She was not reset, but she could not remember anything. Qin Guang speculated that it was the first appearance of the slaughtering world in a cup. There were too many loopholes and bugs, causing the mortal players to be unable to retain their memories when they escaped. Their abilities should not have been inherited into the real world. There must be a bug in the slaughtering world. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been a repair process. Forget it. As for what would happen in the future, he would know in the next slaughtering world in a cup. Raising his head to look at the sky, Qin Guang noticed that the world that was violently trembling had returned to its calm state. But he could clearly feel that the distance between the real world and the real world was getting closer. After Qin Guang left, Chu Zijin was also baffled by this matter. She put her hand in her pocket and was about to walk back when she suddenly exclaimed in surprise. She took out a memory card from her pocket. "What's this? Strange? When did this thing come into my pocket?" Back on the set, for some reason, Chu Zijin found someone to bring a card reader over. She went back to the RV alone and inserted the memory card into it. A long 4K video was stored in the memory card. Chu Zijin was dumbfounded when she saw the video. What is this?" Chapter 1208. A familiar figure appeared in front of her. It was Qin Guang himself. At this time, a strange creature was flying in the air in front of him. Chu Zijin paused the picture and zoomed in. Thanks to the effect of the 4K ultra-high-definition video, she could tell that it was a mosquito with a ridiculously large body. Qin Guang was standing proudly in the same place like a god of war, throwing all kinds of heavy punches at these mosquitoes. Not only that, from time to time he leaped into the air like the martial arts masters in the TV and movies. He stepped on the air and used the lightness kung fu that was better than the Wudong cloud ladder, twisting and turning in the air, throwing one heavy punch after another. However, these mosquitoes were not easy to deal with. They looked slender, but in fact they were extremely tough. Their bodies were glowing with a strange light, and each of them was as tenacious and tough as a monster. In order to deal with these strange mosquitoes that were getting stronger and stronger, the strength and power of his punches were getting stronger and stronger. To put it simply, it could even be said that he was about to rise from the ordinary level of intermediate martial arts to the fantasy level of advanced martial arts. This crazy killing continued for a long time. Then, the image changed, and the opponent in front of him was simply changed to a fantasy type of giant stone man. As a young man who dabbled in a wide range of things, Chu Zijin could certainly recognize that these stone men were basically the same thing as the Hellfire in the large-scale online game World of Warcraft that had once been popular all over the world. Then, under her incredulous gaze, her boss, Qin Guang himself, was simply transformed into an invincible god of war with a full body of superb equipment. He fought with countless hellfire alone, displaying his strength vividly in a rather magical way. This was not the end. After these hellfire suddenly became corpses in a way that she could not understand, the image changed again, and it was Qin Guang himself who appeared in a white maze-like tunnel, facing all kinds of monsters of different sizes, but each wave was so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. Some of these monsters were humanoid and some were strangely shaped. Some were big and some were small, but without exception, the strength and speed of each monster far exceeded the limits of human understanding. These things looked like real monsters, but they also looked like the effects of unparalleled computer special effects. Even if it was just a simple exchange of punches and kicks, the vibrations caused in the video seemed to be earth-shattering. The entire video was shot through a single long shot. There were no scenes or camera changes. Frankly speaking, the filming technique was very amateurish and unprofessional. However, thanks to the high-end long-lens shooting equipment, whether it was the high-speed capture or the number of frames, they were far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Finally, after more than 4 hours, Chu Zijin finished watching the super-long 4K video from beginning to end. After that, she used professional video editing software to do a comprehensive analysis of the entire video. When she returned to the page and saw the size of the file, she was dumbfounded. What kind of horrible equipment was used to film this? Also, where did this scene take place? Qin Guang, this unreasonable boss, where did he go to put on such a show? 3,600 frames per second, 4K resolution, super perfect lighting and color restoration effect. Attention all high beings ahead. In this small memory card, the volume of the entire video file exceeded 100 terabytes. Not AG but AT. One document was equivalent to a lifetime's worth of savings for many people. In this world, is there such a perfect camera? How did it come about? What does Qin Guang mean by sneaking this memory card into my pocket? Also, although my computer's performance was good, under normal circumstances, it would not be able to recognize such a large external memory device, nor would it be able to play this video. What's so special about it? Chu Zijin tried to analyze the compression algorithm of the video file and was even more shocked. As one of the top 3 hackers in the world, she could not understand the compression algorithm of the file at all. Whether it was the performance of the hardware or the level of the software algorithm of the video file itself, the contents of this memory card completely exceeded her understanding and knowledge. It was so powerful that she began to doubt her own outlook on life. Wait, he had clearly left just now, but he purposely came back and secretly stuffed this memory card into my pocket. First of all, this indeed showed that he was very interested in my God, in the 4th episode. Second, this definitely meant that he was worried that the current footage would not reach the desired effect, so he purposely came back and put the memory card in my pocket. As for why he didn't say it in person, it was probably because the video was too strange and he really could not explain how it came about, so he purposely did this. After thinking through the key points, Chu Zijin immediately made a decision. At this time, the director finally finished shooting the scene outside. He came to the RV and knocked on the window. "Chief Chu, are you inside? The scene is finished and there are a few guests who want to go back to the city. Chief Chu, do you want to take a look at the camera and decide whether or not to let them go?" Chu Zijin opened the door and jumped out. She waved her hand. "You came at the right time. That's fine too. Those who want to leave, arrange for a car to send them away. I have some footage here that Chief Qin gave me. Let's discuss how to integrate these scenes into the main film and improve the overall effect of the entire program." The director scratched his head blankly. "Footage? What? Let me see?" 15 minutes later, the director and the assistant director were also stunned in the temporary studio. What is this? Won't people think we are shooting a movie? This is too unreal. Will people believe it?" In the face of everyone's doubts, Chu Zijin made a decision without hesitation. "The footage is so real. What's there to believe? This was personally handed to me by Chief Qin. Did he make a mistake in his judgment of the program? We didn't meet expectations in the first 3 episodes, and we can't afford to lose this 4th episode." Chu Zijin made the decision. The next few days would be the post-production of the program. They might need to use the most powerful supercomputer in the country, the Light of the Moonlight Lake. Fortunately, the company was not short of money and could afford it. In the entire program, in addition to the PK scenes with the strongmen and weightlifting champions, and the stunts such as pulling the high-speed rail with his bare hands, they also had to embed the most important part of the long shot into the entire program. Chu Zijin had already thought about it. She would compress the length of the fourth episode and divide the entire program into 2 segments. The first half would be "Hi, my God." The regular PK segment, the second half. Considering that Qin Guang had always been strong and domineering, Chu Zijin decided to directly name it Qin Guang's personal show time. At that time, when this footage was released, no matter whether people believed it or not, or whether they would suspect that it was a computer stunt, it would definitely cause a global sensation. Whether it was doubt or crazy worship, it didn't matter. Based on my understanding of him, in the face of doubt, he would definitely come up with more real skills to prove everything, just like he did every time before. No matter how magical the picture in the memory card looked, Chu Zijin, as a fanatic and crazy worship of Qin Guang, did not hesitate to choose to believe that this footage was real. Although they didn't know where it happened, they didn't know where the phantom beasts he faced came from, and they didn't know the purpose of his battle with the phantom beasts. But this wasn't important. What he wanted was to put the camera on the show, and let the world recognize him like every time before, recognizing that he had an unparalleled and unsurpassable perfect body of all mankind. As a superfan who had always been paying attention to the almighty Superman, Chu Zijin really knew this guy too well. As for Qin Guang himself, he did not know what Chu Zijin was planning. He would not have thought that there would be a memory card in her pocket. This memory card contained scenes of him transforming into a bald warrior and fighting in the massacre world. In addition, the strangest thing about the whole matter was not just that. Previously in the massacre world, he had clearly transformed into a bald man that even she did not recognize. But now, the memory card was filled with his long hair and handsome enough to alarm the Jade Emperor himself. In addition, if Chu Zijin could still retain Peasant's memory, she would suddenly realize that these scenes were actually taken by her with the ultra-high-definition camera in her eyelashes after she received the side mission during the massacre mission. After getting off the plane, Qin Guang did not dare to delay. He drove the Bentley that was sent over by the Tianguang group and set off. The reason why he used a Bentley was that the car was not only fast, but it also had a good driving feel. Its driving range was also far greater than that of a supercar. He first strolled around the Wujing city area and hurriedly visited every victim who was troubled by the assassin incident. After making sure that everyone's mental and physical state was fine, he directly rushed to Lilai County. He did not dare to let the security around everyone relax. It was also his own fault for making a mistake. Although the top 500 large organizations in the world had basically disappeared, the bounty was still there. No matter how afraid the other organizations were, it was hard to guarantee that some insignificant characters would hold the idea of going home and getting married after doing a bit of work. They would either be ill-informed, or they would stubbornly insist on bumping into each other because they had nothing to lose. How could one not wet his shoes if he often walked by the river? Even the most powerful person could be knocked down by a brick in a street fight if he let his guard down. Qin Guang really could not bear the fact that the people around him were hurt because of him. When he arrived at Lilai County, it was already past midnight. He did not go to see the villa that had been blown up. Instead, he went straight to the hiding place of his relatives in his hometown, a very hidden underground fortification. If he had not reached his current status, he would never have known that there was such a large underground military fortification in Lilai County that could accommodate 3,000 people for more than 2 years. Of course, as far as he knew, it was built in only 4 months under the command of the old men above him after he made a name for himself. It could be to protect his family, but it could also be to monitor them. But this was not important. It was good that everyone had a tacit understanding. People always thought about the worst of everything, it would be too tiring to live. Qin Guang anxiously drove the car into the hidden entrance of the underground fortification, which was like the mouth of a monster. Now he was a little nervous. From a small character to this day, his parents were finally implicated because of him. Who knew how frightened the 2 elders were right now, and he would definitely have to give them a harsh scolding. Scolding them was fine, but Qin Guang could not bear to see his parents panicking. It would make him feel a strong sense of self-blame. Chapter 1209. With this in mind, Qin Guang rolled down the window. "Buddy, let me in quietly. Don't tell anyone that I'm back." Qin Guang blinked. Coincidentally, this guy was one of his students in Shun's special training camp. He stood at attention decisively, saluted him, and then replied in a low voice, "Okay, Chief Instructor." Qin Guang immediately understood his identity and nodded with satisfaction. "You're great, young man." After that, he shrunk his neck and looked inside. Chief Instructor, you probably need me to lead the way." The young man just now greeted his colleague on duty and actually followed him from behind. Qin Guang suddenly put on a straight face. What are you doing? Aren't you AWOL? No, we've arranged 7 people in each class. One of us will lead the way for you when you come back. Qin Guang suddenly understood and only responded with an "oh." He thought that the old men were really kind and thoughtful. He had 2 plans in mind. If his parents were in a bad state of mind and were in a bad mood, then he would obediently go out and get beaten up. He wouldn't die anyway. If his parents were in a bad mood but they weren't in a bad mood, then he would quietly run away first and come back after the assassin's matter was settled. By then he wouldn't be beaten too badly. Although his father's voice sounded normal on the phone, based on Qin Guang's understanding of his father, he was the kind of ruthless person who would pretend that nothing had happened even if the sky had fallen in front of him. As a result, he would often stomp his feet in anger as soon as he turned his back. It was completely possible that he was in a bad mood right now. With this in mind, Qin Guang quietly came to the surveillance room under the guidance of the guard who had turned into a guide. There are surveillance cameras in everyone's room? Qin Guang's face immediately darkened. The guard hurriedly explained, "How is that possible? Chief Instructor, don't worry. The surveillance cameras only cover all the corridors. Every guest room is an independent room of the highest standard. Not only is it fully equipped, but it is also absolutely private. Now your father and the others are in the activity room." Activity room? Look at the time, why aren't you sleeping yet? Qin Guang had a bad feeling in his heart and then he saw the image on the monitor. It was bustling with activity. 7. Bang. I'm sorry, I tried to snatch the bar. A 1. This is too much. Despicable. Shameless. Well done. Pointing a fart is better than pointing a bar. Fart beard? Sorry, it's full. Damn. Qin Guang silently looked at his parents, uncles in the surveillance screen. Not only did they not feel any discomfort but they actually set up 3 tables and were playing mahjong together. He was quite speechless. These people didn't look uncomfortable at all. It was as if they were on vacation. What about the others? Qin Guang asked again. The surveillance screen changed again, and what appeared in front of him was his little cousin, and his nephew. These little kids were sitting in a guest room with a bitter expression. His second aunt, who taught junior high school, was holding a stick and walking around 5 or 6 little guys from high school to 3 years old with a serious expression on her face. Do it for another half an hour. I'll let you play a game of King of Glory and then go to sleep. Second aunt said after walking around. The little guys immediately cheered. Qin Guang was dumbfounded. In other words, it was equivalent to being under house arrest here. Not only did his family members not feel unhappy, but they were also living a very comfortable life. Those who should play mahjong played mahjong, those who should study read, and like second aunt, she even moved her work here directly. In another monitor, if he was not mistaken, a few grandfathers were playing mahjong. This time, Qin Guang was very relieved and boldly greeted the guards, and swaggered into the activity room. Seeing him enter the door, his father was actually too lazy to stand up from the chair. His father, who was facing the door of the activity room, waved his hand casually. Yo, you're back. Bang. Qin Guang. After waiting for about a few seconds, his mother, who was sitting at the other table, finally reacted. She first shouted, "You brat, you finally know to come back to take a look. Put him down." Inji. Bang. Qin Guang. After waiting for a few more seconds, everyone suddenly shouted in unison, "Qin Guang is back." Everyone's voice sounded a little louder. Qin Guang thought to himself, this is right. This is the correct response. But in the next second, everyone turned their faces in unison. Those who should touch, those who should fight, those who should fight, those who should fight, those who should fight. Completely. No one. Pay attention to him. Why are you all so thick-skinned? On the other side, his mother only stood up after she had done all that. She took him outside and looked him up and down to make sure that he wasn't injured. She patted his shoulder and said, "Fortunately, you're fine. But we're right. You'll definitely be fine." Qin Guang said in surprise, "Mom, why are you so confident in me?" Feng Rong rolled her eyes. "Why are you still pretending? Everyone in our family knows about your situation. Our Feng family has brought glory to our ancestors. You've done well, kid. The higher-ups let us watch some videos related to you. We knew that no matter how bold those assassins are, they won't find trouble with you. As long as we're fine, everything will be fine." Qin Guang nodded. "That's true, but I thought, do you think we'll be so scared? It was like that at the beginning, but your friends who are officials explained it very clearly to us." There were even a few martial arts masters who came and said that you're now the leader of the martial arts world and that their duty is to protect our safety. Very powerful. All of them seem to come alive from the TV series. And this place is also very impressive. It said that even if there's a war, this place can be fortified for a year or two. Feng Rong comforted him. So we also thought it through. Instead of making you worry for no reason, it's better to be happy. You don't say this underground place is not stuffy at all. We can also surf the internet and watch TV. The food is also quite good. It's even better than the new Chinese restaurant we opened. Qin Guang was speechless. When he turned into his consciousness and came over, everyone didn't seem to be in a good state of mind. They were sitting around the table eating buns. He really didn't expect that everyone would be in such a state when he came back. It was simply shocking. How was this a refuge? Everyone in the world wanted to take refuge like this. Alright, it's already past 12. Why aren't you sleeping? Second aunt is still tutoring little cousin and the rest? Isn't it because everyone had insomnia on the first day? Anyway, things won't end in a short time. Simply adjust the biological clock. Anyway, there's no distinction between day and night in this underground place. When Feng Rong said this, she accidentally revealed a piece of information. In fact, it seemed that it was fun for everyone to stay here, but it was still quite inconvenient. Qin Guang was very sensitive and wanted to say something. He didn't expect Feng Rong to think faster than him. Don't worry too much about this. We heard in the afternoon that we don't know what happened to those killers. Anyway, a lot of people were arrested at once. It's very strange. Until now, there are still unconscious people found in the county town. According to speculation, they are likely to be those bastards who came to trouble us. We have to believe in the country. What era is this? It's not the Bund. How can we let these people do whatever they want? After listening to his mother, Qin Guang vaguely understood. No wonder there hadn't been any particularly obvious turbulence until now. It turned out that those killers who had their souls crushed by him didn't go crazy on the spot, but were unconscious on the spot. Forget it, it made no difference. Well, if you have nothing else, I'll go out and talk to the person in charge. Don't you want to sit down? I don't play cards. I have to take care of this matter. The sooner it's done, the sooner everyone will feel at ease. Okay, then you pay more attention to rest. It's almost our bedtime in an hour or so. You can ask someone to arrange a room for you. Do you want to eat first? Mom, don't worry. I'll arrange it myself. Do you want me to make some chicken soup for you? No need, no need. You don't have to do anything. Oh, then I'll continue to play cards. Oh, by the way, that little girl named Xianqin is really obedient. She likes you very much. You didn't do anything to her, right? That's against the law. What are you talking about? If there's nothing else, I'll go first. Qin Guang fled in panic. He almost let it slip that Xianqin was only young, but she was already 18 years old. Not against the law. If he had really said that, wouldn't he have let her spill the beans? Furthermore, Qin Guang had no idea if his mother was feigning politeness or if she really wanted to cook for him. But when Qin Guang said that he didn't want it, she immediately turned around and left without any delay. At this moment, his aunt's urging voice resounded from the activity room. Qin Guang thought about it again. Everyone in his family was so calm. Maybe they had discussed this in private early on so that he wouldn't feel too much pressure. This is what family should be like. Qin Guang went straight to the command room, where Xianqin and Xuelin were sitting. Seeing him enter the door, the two stood up at the same time. Xianqin's eyes were filled with joy, but Xuelin seemed a little reserved. Sit. You've all worked hard during this period. Qin Guang said cheerfully. As soon as he said this, others might not feel anything, but he actually felt as if it was a lifetime ago. There was no specific time statistics in the slaughter world, but even a fool would know that at least half the moon had passed in there. The most important thing was that the experience was too rich, and the feelings were too unique. In addition, when he transformed into his consciousness and traveled around the world, it also made his state of mind change too much. Xianqin rushed up and punched him in the chest. Go to hell. What are you pretending to be polite for? Chapter 12:10. What do you mean by hypocritical politeness? I'm really thankful to you. Qin Guang let Xianqin hit him casually. Unknowingly, her martial arts cultivation had been raised to the middle stage of skin strength. He didn't know how she had been practicing during this time. But with her current strength, it was no different from tickling Qin Guang. Well, you can say that to others. It doesn't matter to me anyway. Xianqin intended to be more intimate with him, but then she remembered that Xuelin was next to her, so she immediately restrained herself. Chen Guang turned to look at Xuelin and said, I haven't seen you for a long time. Your strength has improved a lot. You've been practicing well. Xuelin scratched her head embarrassedly. I'm far worse than Deputy Director Xin, and I can't compare with you, Director Xin. Chen Guang almost laughed out loud. This girl really had a dream. She wanted to compete with him. After chatting with the two for a while, Chen Guang thought for a while and asked Xin to represent him and promise all the martial artists participating in the security operation that he would give a lecture to everyone in the future, imparting all his insights and experiences on the path of martial arts. After that he was pulled away by Xin. Yes, he was pulled away. When Chen Guang saw how anxious she was, he thought that she had some improper plans in her mind, which made him feel elated. Unexpectedly, when the two of them arrived at her private resting room, her face suddenly became serious. I say, you're the one who killed those assassins, right? Xin said as she turned on her computer. A long list appeared on the screen. There were at least 3,000 names on it. While she was talking, the names on the list were still increasing. Chen Guang took a closer look and saw a long list of notes written behind each name, including code names, rankings, organizations, locations when they were found, and other information. Is this the list of unconscious killers? Chen Guang asked. Xin nodded and said, that's right. So far, people are still being discovered. The area around Lilai County is almost finished, but it's still not over in all the cities across the country. I heard that the same phenomenon is happening in some places overseas. At first, people in many places thought that they had encountered evil spirits or were haunted, but the identities of these people who had fainted were slowly figured out. Without exception, all of them are members of an assassin organization. Chen Guang replied, Oh, you're done with an O? In addition to being members of the same assassin organization, these people also have one thing in common, and that is, they are all involved in the same bounty mission. I think you already know that these people have accepted the bounty to cause trouble for you. Those who have fainted are either members of the organization that have already entered the country, or members of the headquarters of these people. According to the intelligence provided by some spies, even if they are both assassin organizations, as long as they are not involved in this matter, everything will be fine. In the past, the members of the organization who were targeted hid very well, and Interpol couldn't find any traces of them no matter how hard they tried. Now these people have completely fainted without any warning, and no matter how advanced medical methods are used, they still can't find any reason. Isn't this very strange? Xin seemed to be analyzing the situation by herself, but it also seemed like she was asking Chen Guang. Chen Guang nodded calmly and said, That's right, this is simply too strange. Xin said, she continued, all right, many people have all kinds of hidden identities when they are first discovered, and others would never even dream that they are members of an assassin organization. Many people are discovered to have fainted first, and then the police in turn follow the clues to investigate the identity of the other party. The accuracy is almost 100%. Chen Guang pretended to be very surprised and said, I see. That's really scary. Xin hammered her chest with her pink fist again and said, Go to hell. I don't believe this has nothing to do with you. Chen Guang chuckled and said, All right, I did it. Even though she had already guessed the answer, Xin still couldn't help but exclaim, How on earth did you do it? Chen Guang grunted and said, Have you forgotten? My other identity. What? You're an Earth-style Archmagus, not a spiritual-style Archmagus. Also, this matter itself is too difficult to understand, right? There are so many people in countless completely different places in the world, how can this happen at the same time? Can you explain it to me? Chen Guang chuckled and said, I can't explain it clearly, it's too profound, I really don't know how to explain it. Chen Guang didn't intend to hide it from Xin. It didn't matter whether she knew or not. If she told others, no one would believe her, and of course she wouldn't say anything. Xin blinked her eyes and looked at him for a long time, not saying a word. After a long time she sighed and said, I thought that after I became a skin-strength martial artist with great difficulty, the gap between us could be narrowed a little, now it seems that it was completely a dream. Go, how close do you want to be? Aren't I standing right here? Do you want negative distance? Bah. I was thinking maybe one day you will become an immortal. Stop it, there are no immortals in this world. But there are gods. Chen Guang grunted and said, That's right, there are gods. It's said that when a man achieves the Tao, his fowls and dogs will ascend to heaven. If a man becomes a god, how many things will he bring up to heaven? Chen Guang thought for a while, The recent changes in the whole world appeared in his mind again, and he said meaningfully, "I'm afraid the whole world will become a god with this man." Is that so? Who wants to discuss life with you? It's better to do something slightly more meaningful. Go away, he is still young, go find someone else. Really? Then it's fake. It really wasn't Qin Guang who tormented young people. Originally, there was no need to go to the bedroom, but Xan Qin pulled him in. She was simply exposing herself here. Of course, as he expected, although this little girl was quite reserved at first, when Qin Guang really wanted to back out, she immediately disagreed. In fact, the little girl was also quite puzzled. She shouldn't be interested in this kind of thing, but since she broke her vows with this big chrysanthemum, she couldn't control herself. While Qin Guang was enjoying the rare softness, he received another call in the command room outside. One of the unconscious members of the assassin organization finally woke up, but perhaps it was better not to wake up like this. He had completely gone crazy. After the first person woke up, more members of the assassin organization who were controlled woke up one after another, but without exception all of them became crazy and completely lost their consciousness. Not only that, but there were also more people in a state of madness emerging from all over the world. Without exception, these people were all members of the assassin organization. The names on the list increased rapidly. In just 2 hours, it increased from more than 3,000 people to more than 5,000 people, and the increase did not slow down but continued to accelerate. As time went by, after one night, the number of these poor people who were found from all over the world after going crazy exceeded 15,000 people. Moreover, the names on the list were still increasing. This situation could be said to be shocking to the world. The second-rate assassin organizations who survived were the most panicked, but the agent organizations of various countries around the world were not much better. In particular, the US agents felt the most. The US's intelligence organization was relatively the most complete, and the list they collected was also the most complete. When there were only 15,000 people on the list in China, their list had increased to more than 20,000 people. Crazy, the whole world had gone crazy. When all the ordinary people were still clueless, another level that ordinary people could not reach seemed to have experienced a major earthquake. A huge question mark appeared in the hearts of countless people, and everyone wanted to know what happened. There was no reason for these people to suddenly go crazy. How strong was the mind of every top assassin? Their hands were stained with blood, and their hearts were as hard as stone. Even in the face of a life-and-death crisis, they could still remain calm, and it was impossible for them to go crazy so easily. But this thing really happened, and it was right in front of everyone. Although this matter was indeed related to Qin Guang's bounty mission, except for a few people, no one would link this infinite unbelievable coincidence to the possibility that he was the one who did it. Only God could do it. The Schultz family, who took out a huge sum of money to put up the bounty mission, was even more anxious. They thought these people were cursed, and perhaps the curse would befall them in the next second. They even wanted to cancel the bounty, but unfortunately, there was no such thing as canceling a mission posted on the dark web. Once this mission was posted, it would be difficult to take it back. The next morning, when Xan Qin woke up from her sleep, she quietly got up and returned to the command room. When she saw the changes overnight, her mouth was wide open, and she could not say a word for a long time. That guy who was still sleeping, how scary of a forbidden spell did he use to cause this situation? Was he still human? Deputy Director Xen, you seem to have something on your mind? Another military personnel who took over Xuelin's shift asked cautiously. Xan Qin waved her hand. It's nothing, you do your own thing. Qin Guang woke up, and without asking, he knew that Xan Qin had gone to the command room again. He did not go to Xan Qin again but went to his parents' place. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that the half-day of leisure he had been dreaming of would actually be in this underground fortification. He didn't have to go to school, and he didn't have to worry about the disturbance outside. The recording of God of Joy had been completed, and the rest was left to Chu Zijin. The release of women was still progressing step by step, but this matter had nothing to do with him except money. As for the photocatalyst project, he had already handed over all the procedures to Teacher Zhua, and her progress was completely under control. Tangshan Industrial Factory did not need to worry about him. With Teacher Zhua's research and development of photocatalysts, they had already won the Science and Technology Progress Award, and the Chinese Academy of Sciences had already approved a high-tech enterprise license. Tiansong Water couldn't even get a sip of soup. Not only that, in the foreseeable future, when Teacher Zhua realized the industrial production of all the 5 god-level formulas, companies like Tiansong Water, which relied on traditional craftsmanship, would either come to lick his morning light environmental protection or wait to go bankrupt. Therefore, before coming up with a way to solve the bounty task, he could stay here with peace of mind unless something new happened. Of course, the degree of integration of the real world and the real world was deepening day by day, and the world of slaughter had already appeared. Who knew when the whole world would change drastically? Qin Guang thought about it, and it was best to stay here with his heart at ease. He couldn't tell anyone about this. Others might not believe him if he told them, but he was the only one who knew. Therefore, he dragged the elders of his family to the card table. Qin Guang thought about it. Although he could definitely win with his brain, he decided to lose. Anyway, the elders didn't play much, and the limit was 10 yuan. Therefore, for the whole day he changed 3 tables and lost everything. He scattered a few thousand yuan on each table, trying to make his relatives and friends happy. He didn't expect that his mother's heart would ache when she saw him lose so much, and she refused to let him go to the table the next day. Master Guang, who had lost the right to participate in entertainment activities, could only helplessly roll to the side. He wanted to find some cousins to play games with, but in the end all of them were playing with dogs and none of them were pigs with knives like him. After that, Qin Guang became completely alone. His mother even said, "Go do what you have to do, your things are more important, don't worry about us." Qin Guang returned to his room with a pained expression. There were 3 choices in front of him. He could play Dota, chat with people online, or watch a movie. After thinking about it, he decided to watch a movie to calm himself down. That's right, he wanted to watch a killer movie. It wasn't that he wanted to be a killer, but he wanted to experience the psychology of those people through such movies. He didn't expect that watching this movie would actually give him a way to solve the bounty mission. There wasn't any profound trick, just an idea that allowed the mission to be completed directly. Qin Guang rubbed his chin, feeling a little tired. What kind of sin did he suffer? It wasn't enough to die twice in the massacre world, it seemed like he still had to die in the real world. That's right, he planned to pretend to be dead and cheat the bounty money. Without the bounty, who would come to seek death? Chapter 12:11. With an idea in mind, he went to find Xen Qin after some careful planning. The biggest difficulty in doing this was that he had to fake his death so that people wouldn't think it was fake. This would be impossible for ordinary people. If it was a fake video made with computer special effects, it would never be able to pass the dark web's inspection, no matter how real it was. But for Qin Guang it was as easy as drinking soup. He wasn't bragging. As a veteran who could come back to life even if he was turned into minced meat, it wouldn't be a problem even if he had to send his head to the dark web for verification. It was so much so that Qin Guang even wished for that to happen. Aren't you afraid of a head tracking device? Wouldn't I be able to kill them all? If the dark web really dared to jump out and take his head, he would be able to uproot the organization. Of course, this was just his wishful thinking. It was very likely that the dark web didn't have a real organizer or manager at all. At most, there were only some technicians in charge of maintaining the program, commonly known as senior network managers. Even things like video verification, which involved the distribution of rewards, might be done by a very advanced program that had been written in advance. There might be a group of profiteering top computer programmers or hackers working for them, constantly optimizing the algorithms and management system of the entire website, but these people would always hide in the dark unless they jumped out and asked for it. At first, there were indeed people on the dark web who tried to use technical means to cheat the bounty, and they even succeeded. But such people also ended up in a miserable state. They became the public enemy of all the assassin organizations, and were targeted by all the other organizations. They were treated even worse than Qin Guang, and not a single piece of them was left. Because of all these reasons, as long as Qin Guang's video verification was authentic, he would be able to fool everyone. Also, he had to get an account that could be verified by the dark web to successfully cheat the bounty. What do you think? What do you think of my idea? Isn't it great? When the time comes, all they have to do is take a photo of my death in a more tragic manner and then upload it. We're not acting. We're really going to die in front of them. We'll just make the bounty disappear and all the problems will be solved. Besides, that wasn't a small number. It was 400 million USD. Although I don't lack money now, the feeling of picking up money for free is great just thinking about it. Half an hour later, he told Xen Qin about his wonderful idea. Xen Qin looked at Qin Guang, who was beaming with joy, with a face full of horror. Her mind was in a daze for a long time before she asked doubtfully, "If I didn't mishear you just now, you said something like this? Find a few or dozens of people to give you a round of heavy weapons, then get someone to chop off your head? Then we'll find someone who's registered on the dark web and upload the video. At the same time, we'll publicly announce that you're dead, right? Qin Guang nodded excitedly. That's right, that's it. Xan Qin swallowed her saliva. You can be said to be very wild. But this is the best and most labor-saving method. In any case, even if all the 27,000 assassins in the world go to heaven, as long as the bounty is still on, my family and friends won't be able to live in peace. We can't let this go on forever. Xan Qin looked at him calmly, talking about such a horrible thing, and was speechless. It does make a little bit of sense. It does sound flawless and convincing, but there's something I don't know if I should say. Qin Guang waved his hand generously. Go ahead. Have you forgotten the biggest flaw in your entire plan? Loophole? What? That's impossible. Xan Qin was about to break down. She wanted to kill him. How can you cheat a bounty like this? Aren't you really dead? What's the use of money? A few days ago, our technicians used the dark web's advanced account that we seized from the world's breaker to check inside the dark web. According to their report, the dark web's censorship system is very powerful. It's impossible to fake a video. Qin Guang was amused. Now I'm relieved. We can go in directly. We won't be recognized as the world's breaker, will we? Now that the whole world knows that the world's breaker is in our hands, won't we be suspected if we use their account? Xan Qin answered subconsciously, that won't be the case. According to our insider, all the accounts on the dark web are anonymous. Not only that, every time we log in or use the account, a new code will be generated randomly. That's so secretive. That's good. Let's figure out how to act. Qin Guang suddenly understood. No wonder he couldn't use his mind to look for the mission issuer when he was in God mode. The dark web's ability to hide their identity was too powerful. Wait, that's not what I want to talk to you about. Don't interrupt me. Qin Guang was speechless when he saw that she was still struggling with this problem. He waved his hand decisively. Do you think I'm stupid? If I'm really going to die, why would I come up with such a stupid idea? I already said it's an act. You're playing dead. Xan Qin narrowed her eyes and glanced at him. Playing dead? How can you not die when your head is broken? Aha. You're not human, right? You're an earthworm, right? Go, go, go. I'm serious. Stop talking nonsense and think carefully about how to operate this matter. In short, you don't have to worry about anything else. Just help me think of a way to make this matter convincing enough. Xan Qin still didn't believe him. Qin Guang grabbed a utility knife from her desk and swiped it across his palm in front of her. He then activated the earth explosion talent to show her why the flowers were so red. Looking at the wound in front of her that healed like computer special effects, Xan Qin completely understood. She came to a sudden realization. A long time ago, when she and Wu Miaoan were in his house, an extremely strange thing had happened to this fellow. He had only taken a bath, and the bones in some parts of his body had undergone earth-shattering changes. Now, it seemed like his extraordinary recovery ability was also a manifestation of that. But this was too absurd. Can a severed head recover like this? Xan Qin's heart was shaken. Qin Guang snorted. Yes, it can. Do you want me to perform it for you? No. Then hurry up and think of a way. I think Xuelin will be more professional in this matter. After all, he used to be a professional agent. He has always been in charge of the Shatterer. All right, it's settled then. That afternoon, Xuelin, who was also traumatized, took out a complete set of plans. He was more shocked than Xan Qin, but he had a stronger blind trust in Qin Guang. Obeying orders was the duty of a soldier. Although Xuelin was now part of the management of the Guangding General Headquarters and was no longer a frontline soldier, deep down, he had never changed. Not bad, the idea is good, but the person must have good acting skills and can't be recognized. Looking at the plan in front of him, Qin Guang nodded with satisfaction. Brother Guang, don't worry. In order to get this done, we've decided to use the highest level insider. He's a lone killer. Xuelin explained. Qin Guang's eyes narrowed. Killer? He's different from ordinary killers. He doesn't accept every mission. In a sense, he belongs to our agent system. That's good. That night, an earth-shattering battle took place at the old site of the Chen family's villa in Lilai County. Could be said that the sky was dark and the moon was dim. The rumbling sound lasted for more than half an hour. The hill where the villa was originally located was cut in half, and the strong smell of gunfire drifted from the east to the west of the city. It was a sleepless night for everyone in the county. Many people stood by the window and looked into the distance, and from time to time, they were frightened by the flames and radiance that soared into the sky. It was more like saying that thunder had descended on the world. After a night, someone finally mustered up the courage to come from afar to investigate the situation, but he was so frightened by the destruction in front of him that he lost consciousness. No one knew what happened, but on another level, a video was suddenly published on the dark web, causing an uproar. The video was intermittent. At the beginning, the camera was very far away. It showed a very fast figure standing on the old site of the Qin family's villa. At the same time, at least 10 long-range attacks were raining down on him from all directions. These big guys were very powerful, but they were at the level that ordinary organizations could get their hands on. It could be called a small modern weapons exhibition. Finally, the owner of the figure was careless and took a shot. He seemed to be seriously injured. The video was cut off. The next scene was the live shot of Qin Guang's head that he had discussed with the others. His death was very tragic. His eyes were filled with unwillingness and despair. The anger that poured out and the lines that he roared, "I won't let you go even if I become a ghost." It was simply heartbreaking and tearful. When the list of people in the mental asylum increased to 25,000, the news of Qin Guang's death spread at the same time. The entire underground world was shocked. Well, it could only be said that the underground world was severely damaged and only had half of its strength left. This guy who was blessed by God actually died. Died in his own home? Everyone knew that they should have ambushed him near the villa that was blown up. Many top organizations had done the same before. Unfortunately, before the opportunity came, they were first cursed and went crazy. Just when the world was wondering who else could kill him, he suddenly died in the vicinity of the villa. This was retribution. He must have known what had happened to the other organizations and let his guard down for a moment. This allowed the top organizations that had escaped misfortune and ambushed near his home to take advantage of it. Which organization was it that had hit the jackpot? Forget it, this was not important anymore. The nightmare of the global assassin organizations had finally come to an end. Seeing that the highest bounty in history of 400 million had finally been changed to a completed state, and the bounty had also been cleared to zero, many second and third-rate organizations that had stayed out of the matter and escaped the disaster could not describe how they felt. They felt regretful but also relieved. Chapter 12:12. Just as Qin Guang had expected, even if these low-level teams were scared out of their wits by the terrifying name list, it was still a total of $400 million. Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance, this was how the world was. As long as there was a 300% profit, people would be willing to bet their lives on it, let alone $400 million. Now that the bounty was gone, there was naturally no need to think about it anymore. However, Qin Guang was not in the mood to pay attention to the situation on the dark web. Instead, he was helplessly dealing with one phone call after another. He had thought that the influence of this matter would only be spread on the dark web. He did not expect that many people he knew would receive the news as well. The phone calls coming in from all directions made him feel like his head was about to explode. The first thing most of them said was, "Qin Guang, are you dead?" "I'm not dead, I'm not dead." "That's impossible. I've seen the video. You died so tragically." Old Master Guang held his phone and wished he could spit on the other party's face. "I'm going to die. Who's talking to you guys now? You're not a ghost, are you? All right, you guys win." However, he did not have to worry about the news of him still being alive being leaked. Those who received the news and called him were using the highest level of confidential communication. As long as he told them his true purpose, the news could still be hidden for the time being. Once the limelight was over, he would swagger outside again. Even if the content of the video was leaked through some channel, it wouldn't matter. He could just say that it was made with computer special effects. What? Others will ask, what special effects are these so realistic? What can you do even if I don't tell you? In short, in a certain field, the news of Qin Guang's death was like a muffled thunder that resounded through the entire sky. Most people were shocked and relieved, but there was still a small group of people who were extremely ecstatic. They were the people who had issued the mission. Other ordinary people might not have the chance to know such secrets, but as the mission issuers, they naturally received the notification that the mission had been completed. In these 2 short days, these people's emotions had been on an indescribable roller coaster. When the news of almost all the top assassin organizations around the world being wiped out spread, these people were terrified. The more names there were on the list, the more frightened and desperate they became. Just when these people were about to despair and wanted to take the initiative to find Qin Guang to repent, they suddenly received a piece of heavy news. This guy was dead. Great sorrow and great joy came too suddenly, and those with weak hearts could not bear it at all. A respectable old man in the Schultz family died of a heart disease. As a result, the poor Schultz family's joy turned into great sorrow. Fortunately, this family did not have a history of heart disease. Otherwise, another one might die from anger. When the chairman of Sanxing Group heard this, he silently tore up the check in his hand. Inside the check was $200 million that he had asked his family to prepare. He had intended to add more money to the fund, but now it seemed unnecessary. It was the same for the Japanese consortium. However, there was a force that even Qin Guang did not expect to be involved. It was Song Ningyuan of the Tiansong Water Group. Out of the 400 million USD bounty, he took 20 million. The reason why Song Ningyuan was bleeding so much wasn't because of his jealousy with Chen Guang over Tang Ying, nor was it because of what happened in the Tangshan industrial factory. As Chen Guang once thought, since his 5 god-level formulas were exposed, in addition to the major photocatalyst laboratories around the world that directly participated in the competition, the old-school environmental protection companies were in the most difficult situation in many other aspects. The establishment of Chengguang Environmental Protection indicated that Chengguang's next step must be to focus on the environmental protection industry. Under the premise that they sat on the 5 invincible photocatalysts, other companies had no competitiveness at all. There was only one way for companies to survive in the new environment, which was to rely on Chengguang Environmental Protection, buy photocatalysts at an affordable price, and apply them to the new process. Otherwise, the only fate waiting for them was to be gradually nibbled away until they perish. At the behest of Qin Guang, the commercial development team under Chengguang Environmental Protection had begun to arrange production lines in advance and accept pre-orders. Although there was still at least 1 to 2 years before large-scale industrial production, and the exact cost could not be estimated, it was not a problem to reach a preliminary intention. Song Ningyuan sent someone to the United States early in the morning to negotiate with Chengguang Environmental Protection, and then he received desperate news. Chengguang Environmental Protection refused to deal with Tiansong Water Group. This matter was much more serious than jealousy or a small conflict in the Tangshan industrial plant. This was almost a death sentence for Tiansong Water Group. Song Ningyuan thought about it and decided to take the risk. As long as Qin Guang died, all problems could be solved. He did not expect that not long after he issued the task, someone would immediately increase the bounty. This was not the end. In an unexpected situation, the bounty was quickly increased to the jaw-dropping figure of 400 million USD. Then Qin Guang finally died. When he received the news, Song Ningyuan immediately fell into ecstasy. He even used his mobile phone to take a video. After thinking about it, he decided to let Tang Ying see the video. Of course, he would not be stupid enough to send it himself. Instead, he gave it to someone else and asked them to create a title, "Good and evil will be rewarded, those who are unjust will die, the death of Qin Guang," and then directly spread it on the internet. The omnipotent Superman Qin Guang's popularity was terrifying. Now, even if he walked on the street, he could make headlines, let alone this kind of blinding title. The person Song Ningyuan found was very knowledgeable. Afraid that others would not recognize it, he simply re-edited the video. The beginning of the video was the scene of the poor Master Guang making steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. It was quite unsuitable for children. It was extremely violent and bloody, guaranteed to make people dumbfounded at first sight. As a result, the moment the video was uploaded to the internet, it went viral in the blink of an eye. The number of reposts, comments, and whatnot were not a problem at all. In short, this was a video that could instantly promote a big account. If not for fear of revenge from Qin Guang's people, Song Ningyuan's henchmen would even want to keep this temporarily registered account. As a result, Qin Guang's phone, which had just settled down, immediately exploded with calls. He was really troubled. Fortunately, the people who were especially concerned about him were basically protected by experts arranged by the Guangdong General Headquarters. They could also act as safe messengers. Qin Guang first decisively turned off his phone, then got Xen Qin to notify them one by one through the internal confidential channel. Half a day had passed. Most of the people who were most concerned about his life and death had calmed down, but still could not figure out what he was up to. However, this was how it was in the country. It was not the first time that news of a celebrity's death was spread while he was still alive. It was just that this kind of thing happened to Qin Guang, that was all. That was not the end. His parents had been happily playing cards when his cousin, who had been scrolling through Weibo, suddenly shouted and rushed into the activity room with his phone, shouting in panic, "Oh my God! Brother Guang is dead. He's dead. Oh my God." His cousin first received a slap on the face. Then he played the video to everyone, feeling very aggrieved. Everyone was almost scared out of their wits. Now the whole family rushed to Qin Guang's room. Qin Guang had just been relieved, but he was shocked by his family again. His mother knocked on his door with a pale face shouting, "Qin Guang! Qin Guang! Are you still alive?" Qin Guang opened the door and looked at everyone with a constipated expression. "I say, what are you guys trying to do?" he asked despite knowing the answer. His little cousin rushed up and grabbed his shoulder. "Brother, you're dead. The internet is saying you're dead. There's even a video." Behind the crowd, his niece and little cousin were crying out loud. Qin Guang almost choked on his own saliva. He coughed violently for a while, then pointed to his face. "You're right. I really died a terrible death. I say, are you guys stupid? I don't even know what you're talking about. The internet says I'm dead and you believe it. I'm standing right here. Do I have to explain to you that I'm still alive? I really have to give it to you." Chapter 12-13. Just as he was being cocky, Qin slapped him on the head. "You're the only one who's cocky. You're the only one who's cocky. Isn't everyone just concerned about you? Tell me what's going on. Since you're fine, why would such a video be circulating on the internet?" Qin Guang decided to lie. "Wasn't I filming a movie a while ago? I was preparing for the second movie. This is just an excerpt from the trailer. And just a trailer." "Slice?" Qin asked with a blank look on his face. Qin Guang grunted through his nose. "That's right, it's a trailer. Movie promotions often use this method. First, they release a special effect scene to stir up the topic and popularity. When it's released, the box office will be better." Qin stared at him for a long time before nodding skeptically. "All right, I'll take what you said as the truth. But what kind of lousy movie are you filming? Aren't you the male lead? You'll die the moment you step out?" It's not like that. I can't explain it clearly in a few words. In this trailer it looks like I'm dead, but that's just a fake death. I can revive later on." His little cousin shouted loudly, "That can't be right? You can revive even when your head is cut off? Brother Guang, are you filming a military theme or a fantasy film?" Qin Guang coughed lightly. "This movie is our own creation. It's the world's first full-on special effects military romance fantasy film. It's the kind that's super explosive." His cousin, who was at the side, exclaimed, "Didn't they say that humans aren't allowed to become spirits after the founding of the People's Republic? Can this be filmed? Can it be released?" "I understand now. This is the handwriting of the gunfight version. I'll spit blood all over your face. Go, go, go." On the other side, when everyone heard that it was actually a movie, the older generation immediately lost interest and went back to the mahjong table while shouting and yelling. On the other hand, the younger cousins who were of the same age or were yelling excitedly. They all wanted to ask for a role in the movie, or to be a bystander or something. Qin waved his hand and said, "Go, go, go. Move aside. Filming a movie isn't about running a house. It's about spending money to do business. If you guys mess up the movie, we'll lose tens of millions or even hundreds of millions every minute. Even if we sell all of you kids, it won't be enough. Get out of my way, get out of my way." Qin used the tiger's might to scare everyone away before he greeted the family of his friend and told them that he would be coming over immediately. After that, he pulled Qin Guang to the side. Qin Guang saw that he had finally muddled through and felt slightly relieved. "Dad, what's the matter?" Qin looked nervously at the back of Feng Rong, who was walking away. He then whispered, "Son, look at your dad's age. He's never been on TV before. Why don't you arrange a role for your dad to satisfy his craving? Did you just say it's just a passerby? Can you arrange a scene with Zhao Lingji, the kind where I fall in love at dusk? You don't know how much your dad liked her when he was young." The Zhao Lingji that Qin was talking about was an old female celebrity who had been popular all over the country since 30 years ago. Now she was approaching 60 years old, but she still looked as young as she was in her 20s. She had taken good care of herself. Qin Guang's mouth formed an O shape. He then turned to look at his mother's back. Qin understood. "Help me explain to your mom when the time comes. Tell her that it's necessary for the plot. Let me play your dad in the movie. Anyway, the goodies should be kept within the family." "Mom?" Dad said. "Goodbye, goodbye, this unlucky, silly son." Qin fled. When he returned to Feng Rong's side, she asked suspiciously, "What did you say to Xiao Guang just now?" Qin coughed softly. "I said that he should think of a way to control the video. It's not good for children to see it. It's bloody and violent." "That's true. Yes, yes." Qin listened to his dad and mom's nonsense from afar. He was convinced. It seemed that his ability to adapt to changing circumstances was 100% inherited from his dad. This old ginger was quite spicy. When he returned to his room, he was still a little confused. He had already expected the verified video to be leaked on the dark web, but he didn't expect it to be so soon. Those who had the qualifications to log on the dark web were not ordinary people. Even if others cheered for his death, logically speaking, they should not have exposed it to the general public so quickly. They should have kept quiet and made a fortune. Who could have done it? Investigate. Investigate it thoroughly. He had to investigate thoroughly. Drag this bastard out for me. Find out who uploaded the video. Can we use technical means to track it? He ordered Xuelin. Xuelin answered decisively, "Yes, sir." Song Ningyuan would never have thought that his superfluous actions would completely betray him. He felt that he had only asked someone to upload a video that would be exposed on the internet sooner or later. He had also specially instructed his subordinates to be careful. This subordinate had also found an expert and used very advanced hacking methods. It would not be easy to find out who it was. However, under Qin Guang's order, the Guangdong General Administration, which had extremely high confidentiality authority, urgently mobilized, and the Guangdong General Administration came forward to coordinate the operation. In an instant, the technical staff of the major information management centers all over the country worked overtime to trace the source of the video. Song Ningyuan's underlings were cautious enough. They had also found the best of the internet water army, but they were still worlds apart from the dark web. That night, in the early hours of the morning, when Qin Guang was washing up and getting ready to go to bed, Xuelin knocked on the door. "Brother Guang, I found him. We're doing a surprise review. Do you want to attend the online review meeting?" Qin Guang's eyes lit up. So soon. So he followed Xuelin to the command room. What appeared on the screen was a small, dark room. A very haggard and flustered middle-aged man was handcuffed to an interrogation chair. Qin Guang asked, "This is the person who uploaded the video online?" "No, it's not him. We first used technical means to track the guy who uploaded the video. He's a very experienced hacker. The IP address has been transferred at least 5 times in the United States. We spent a lot of manpower and resources, and even got the help of Interpol to find him in the country. The hacker is in Denghai. We first got our colleagues from the security bureau there to control him, then dig out information about this person from his mouth. He was the one who sent the video to the hacker and then let the hacker spread it on the internet." Qin Guang suddenly understood. "I see. Who is this guy? Why did he come to me for no reason?" As he spoke, the interrogation in the video had already begun. "We have enough evidence to prove that you first obtained the fake video that deliberately discredits China's senior leaders, and then instructed others to illegally spread it on the internet. Tell me who instructed you to do this. Also, according to what we know, this video first appeared on a terrorist network. We have reason to believe that you're engaged in terrorist activities." Qin Guang didn't see the interrogator's face, but the person's voice sounded quite dignified. He should be a professional interrogator. The middle-aged man in the video shrank his neck slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just an unemployed person. I admit that I posted this video, but I really don't know what you mean by a terrorist organization's network. I just climbed over the wall and casually browsed some websites abroad, and then I saw this video. I don't believe it's true at all. I asked someone to upload it online just because I thought it was fun." Bang. The sound of someone slamming the table could be heard from the surveillance camera. "Do you think we're idiots? You have no idea how serious what you've done is. If you don't make amends, I'm afraid." "Afraid of what?" The interrogator didn't answer the middle-aged man's question. There was a rare silence in the video. There was only the occasional rustling of documents. "I admit it. On the surface, I'm indeed unemployed, but I'm actually employed by Mr. Song Ningyuan, the senior director of Tiansong Water Group. This video was also copied for me by him." At that time, Mr. Song didn't say anything. He just asked me to find a safe way to spread the video. The more impact it caused, the better. He even asked someone to send me $1 million in cash and asked me to hire a professional. Very good. It seems that you've realized the seriousness of the matter. In fact, according to the information we have, you've entered the office of Tiansong Water Group more than 10 times this year. Actually, even if you don't say it, we can still find out." The interrogator in the video replied in a calm tone. On this end, Qin Guang already knew that there was no need to listen anymore. This was done by Song Ningyuan. He really thought that he was dead. Although he didn't know the purpose of doing this, he was sure that it wasn't for his own good. Song Ningyuan must be one of the people who put a bounty on him. He just didn't know how much he paid. Back in his room, Qin Guang received a call from Tang Ying. "Qin Guang, I suspect that Song Ningyuan is also involved in the bounty on you," Tang Ying, who was at Morelands Medical College in the United States, said. Qin Guang already had an answer in his heart, but he still played along with her and said, "Why do you suddenly have this idea, Sister Tang Ying?" "He just called me and asked me to have dinner with him when I returned to China. He also asked me if I saw that video of you," Tang Ying explained. Qin Guang laughed. "Isn't that normal?" "No, this isn't normal at all. Although it's spreading like wildfire on the internet, neither your company nor the judicial department has made an official statement so far. Those of us who might know your whereabouts haven't been interviewed by the outside world. But I clearly feel that when he mentioned the video, his tone was clearly 100% sure that you're dead. This clearly doesn't make sense," Tang Ying said, stomping her feet angrily. "This guy actually told me to restrain my grief and accept fate. What a joke." Qin Guang comforted her instead. It's okay. I'll look into it. I'm not a child now and I have people under me. It's easy to find out." After hanging up, Qin Guang thought about it and decided to ask Xuelin to prepare a motorcycle for him. Now that he had found the culprit, Qin Guang had no reason to let him go free, regardless of whether Song Ningyuan was the main culprit or just a minor character. "Well, Brother Guang, are you going to do it yourself? Why don't you just arrange for some people to arrest him?" Xuelin asked, slightly puzzled. She felt that there was no need for Qin Guang to do so. However, Qin Guang grinned and replied, "The Tiansong Water Utility isn't a small company. If someone else gets involved, there might be someone pleading for leniency for him. Otherwise, the Song family might even try to spend money to resolve this disaster. You know that I'm a soft-hearted person and I can't move when I see money. That's not good. So, in order to avoid any more trouble, I'd better do it myself and put an end to it." Qin Guang was still pretending to be dead, so it was not convenient for him to be seen by others. A motorcycle that could travel on mountain roads was, of course, the best choice. Song Ningyuan, who was immersed in the pleasure of revenge, had no idea that he was about to face a disaster. In order to celebrate, Song Ningyuan called a lot of friends to the Heaven and Earth Club to have fun. As his cousin, Qin Guang's other enemy Zheng He, would certainly appear. "Brother Song, you called all of us to celebrate a good thing but you didn't tell us why. That's not very nice." Song Ningyuan raised his glass happily. "Hey, it's my treat. Don't talk nonsense. In short, everyone just relax today. I do have a good thing coming, but it's not convenient for me to tell you now. You'll know after a while. Could it be that Qin Guang is really dead? Is the video on the internet real?" No one was a fool. Everyone knew about the conflict between Song Ningyuan and Qin Guang on MT Tongshan. Immediately, someone connected Song Ningyuan's smugness with the news on the internet. Song Ningyuan raised his eyebrows and pointed at his nose. "Is it that obvious?" "Of course. But many people say that it's a rumor and that the video is fake. Brother Song, you can't be so naive as to believe it, right?" In the face of everyone's doubts, Song Ningyuan only put on a profound look as if they didn't understand. The Buddha said, "It can't be said, it can't be said." He was not such an arrogant person, but now that Qin Guang was dead and he had been very careful, it was impossible for anyone to guess that he was the one who did it. Moreover, it was a reward of 400 million yuan. He only had 20 million yuan in it, so no one would think that it was him. Maybe some people will doubt it, but I, Song Ningyuan, am not a small character. I can't just rely on someone's unproven guess. He had no reason to continue being cautious. Next to him, Zheng He felt a little complicated. He thought worriedly that Qin Guang was dead, but Wenwen, Jiang Yage and Jin Shirue, his so-called confidants, would definitely not let it go. Zheng He coughed lightly, indicating for Song Ningyuan to restrain himself a little. Song Ningyuan understood and didn't think much of it. He patted Zheng He's shoulder and whispered in his ear, "Don't be too nervous. You know, as long as Qin Guang is dead, everyone else is just a motley crew. As time goes on, no one will pay attention to him." Zheng He sighed. "I don't know why, but I keep feeling that something is wrong. You're thinking too much. I'm afraid you've been unlucky too many times with him in the past, so you're oversensitive." Just as this group of people was enjoying the party, Qin Guang's motorcycle was speeding on the national highway. He was not filled with anger, only an inexplicable indifference. He really didn't want to admit that he had changed after coming out of the killing world. Chapter 12-14. When he was with his family, he didn't feel that there was a problem. However, once he went out alone with murderous intent, Qin Guang realized that something in his heart had loosened. To be precise, it had disappeared. What had disappeared was none other than the innate sympathy humans had for their own kind. In the past, his hands weren't exactly clean. They were stained with blood. However, even though he had killed evil people with his own hands, there was still a faint but lingering compassion in his heart. Even if he had to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots, he still had feelings for the plants in his heart. When some people did wrong, he might have been a good person in the past. It was just that his thoughts had gone astray at the wrong time. Or perhaps there were some reasons that he had no choice but to do so. Just like the assassins of the world of destruction, many of them were adopted when they were still young. They didn't have a correct outlook on life and right from the start. Although they deserved to die, they were pitiful. If God was fair when he created every life, then even those unforgivable killers were, in a sense, innocent. However, Qin Guang didn't truly forgive them. Perhaps each of them could find 10,000 reasons for their actions, 10,000 sudden emotions that caused them to make the wrong choice. Their lives deserved sympathy, but it didn't mean that they deserved forgiveness. This was the position that Song Ningyuan had in Qin Guang's heart. Before this, although he hated Song Ningyuan, his dislike for him was only limited to business and jealousy related to Tang Ying. Moreover, Qin Guang had never suffered a loss. The unlucky one was always Song Ningyuan. Therefore, although he had many conflicts with Song Ningyuan, Qin Guang didn't really care about him. Now that he was getting stronger, whether it was Qingguang Group or Morning Light Environmental Protection, with his influence in the political and military circles, Song Ningyuan would just be a laughable passerby. When Song Ningyuan truly understood his own strength, he knew that continuing to go against him was simply courting death. If he had followed the normal trajectory of his life, Song Ningyuan and his cousin Zheng He would have become two parallel lines. But now that things had come to this, since he had already done it, he had to pay the price. Stepping on the accelerator, Qin Guang sped up a little more. On the other side, Song Ningyuan, Zheng He, and the others who were partying all night in the club, unknowingly changed the topic to Qin Guang. "Brother Song, don't you think this is strange?" The video had been on the internet for a whole day, but why hadn't Qin Guang's people responded? His movie is still playing. I want to watch it. It's really good. He has to refute the rumors, right? Song Ningyuan pursed his lips. Refute rumors? That would have to be a real rumor to be refuted, right? In my opinion, this video is real. Qin Guang is already dead. That's impossible, right? That was Qin Guang. How could he die just like that? Couldn't this video be a special effect created by someone else to deliberately discredit him? Otherwise, it could be the leak of his movies. The people around them said in disbelief. Song Ningyuan shrugged. Anyway, I'm just guessing. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. Don't you think that the people from Qingguang Group are being too quiet? It's very likely that Qin Guang is really dead, which is why they haven't made any moves yet. Let me give you an example. If I were to die one day before the matter is properly investigated and my funeral arrangements are made, would my family announce my death to the public? They wouldn't. Song Ningyuan continued with a beaming expression. Qin Guang is the biggest shareholder of Qingguang Group and Qingguang Environmental Protection, and he's also the chairman. His every move has great implications, not to mention the news of his death. Don't worry, I'll still say the same thing. Wait for another 2 days and naturally nothing will be hidden. Another person next to him took out his phone, pointed at it and teased, "These days the media people are really bored out of their minds. The internet is all over the place writing about Qin Guang. There are actually people here saying that Qin Guang is trying to promote his variety show. Someone said that according to the Reuters photos, Qin Guang will appear in the next episode of his company's variety show, and the main theme will be the strongest body. Then, the purpose of releasing this video in advance is to warm up and hype up his lousy show? What a joke. Who would hype up something like that?" Song Ningyuan glanced at him. "Are you stupid? Who do you think you are? Why would you watch these media people's nonsense? It's a waste of time." This person was a little embarrassed by what Song Ningyuan said. "My family always says that I didn't study well overseas, so they told me to read more news when I have time now. Then you have to watch something useful. Let's put it this way. According to what you said, if the media is trying to promote his show, then the scenes of Qin Guang jumping and dodging bullets in the video, and all kinds of sniping with his bare hands must be real. Then the scene of his death must also be real. This can indeed prove that he is very good at fighting and has great strength, but what's the use of that? He's already dead. Who would want to watch a variety show about a dead person? Reminisce about him on the show? Then what if? I'm saying what if? Let's say that this video is made with computer special effects. But doesn't his show focus on real people and strange things? Even if he did it himself, he would have to film the real thing, right? There's no reason to use computer special effects to hype it up. As Song Ningyuan said this, he smugly patted his friend's head. So, don't watch these useless things. It's a waste of time and even more embarrassing. Let me introduce you to a consulting company. What's it for? It's that the other party will selectively provide you with information and articles that they have verified and determined to be useful based on your profession and your requests. Isn't this the same as the self-media pushed by artificial intelligence? No, this is completely different. Just like the article you're reading, it's completely made up and doesn't make sense. It's all nonsense made up by some rather unprofessional self-media people. You've wasted a whole 5 minutes of your time reading this article, and now you're telling me about it, and you've wasted another 5 minutes of my time. Now that we're playing outside, it doesn't matter if we waste some time, but what if we're working? Then this time is very precious and we can't afford to waste it like this. But we can't cut off information from the outside world. After all, there are countless business opportunities lurking in this, but we can't waste time. The purpose of the service provided by this company is more clear. First, they'll exclude that kind of false information. Then they'll summarize the important events in the relevant fields according to our needs and send it to us in the most objective manner. All of it will be manually reviewed, which can maximize our time. That good? How much does it cost per month? 50,000. It's not expensive. I'll book it tomorrow. I say if you two want to play, then play happily. Can you not talk about business at this time? Okay, I won't talk about it anymore. Song Ningyuan waved his hand and agreed with a smile. Ever since the news of Qin Guang's death was confirmed, he realized that he had become a different person. He had become more passionate, and he even began to care about time management, which he rarely cared about in the past. Brother, if there's nothing else, I'll go back first. There's an exam at school tomorrow. Next to him, Zheng He came over wanting to say something but hesitating. He knew that Song Ningyuan would not take it seriously even if he said it, but he did not know what was going on tonight. He had been feeling a little uneasy and he kept feeling very uneasy. Don't be funny. Are you kidding me? You still care about the exam? What? Will the teachers in your school let you fail the exam? Not necessarily. As long as I take the exam, I definitely won't fail. But if I miss the exam, it'll be difficult. Speaking of which, this matter also has something to do with Qin Guang. Because of this guy, the management of privileged students in the school has become very strict. The more famous a person is, the more they will be watched. Okay, you're so troublesome. Back then, I asked you to go abroad to study at a university. You can see the world and have fun. It was you who insisted that it was more comfortable in Wujing. Do you regret it now? Okay, then I'll walk you out. Okay, I happen to have something to talk to you about, brother. The two of them turned around and said goodbye to the people in the private room. Then they walked out side by side. The two of them did not go straight outside. Instead, they turned a corner in the corridor and went straight to the fire escape. Zheng He lowered his voice and asked, Brother, how are you so sure that Qin Guang is dead? There were no outsiders here. Song Ningyuan chuckled and said in a low voice, You should know that Qin Guang's house was blown up some time ago, right? Zheng He swallowed his saliva. I know. Did you get someone to do it? I did mention it to you before, but I didn't expect you to really do it. Song Ningyuan smiled meaningfully. I did do it, but it wasn't me. What do you mean? I did participate in the bounty for Qin Guang's death, but I only paid this much. Song Ningyuan put up 2 fingers. 20 million? USD. *CK. Where did you get so much cash? Don't worry about where I got it. Anyway, I'll pay this part of the money. Part of the money? That's right. Qin Guang has too many enemies. Apart from me, there are at least a few other forces who participated in the bounty for him. This is the total amount of his bounty. Song Ningyuan put up another 4 fingers. 40 million US dollars? No, it's 400 million. Zheng He sucked in a cold breath. Even as the son of the chairman of New Radiance Corporation, he had never thought that someone would spend so much money to put a bounty on someone else's head. Just how big of a grudge is this? You don't have to worry about that. Anyway, this video was actually sent to me by someone else. The bounty has been completed and Qin Guang is indeed dead. Zheng He was silent for a long time, unable to speak for a long time. A look of ecstasy appeared on his face. I really admire you. But it's good that he's dead. It's good that he's dead. Of course. Why else do you think I called you guys here today? Isn't it to celebrate this? But brother, don't be too obvious when you're outside. Qin Guang's background is so complicated. I know that, but he's already dead. There's a saying that you have to remember, Tea cools when people leave is an unchanging truth, no matter how high a person's status is. That's true. Zheng He nodded. Then I'll go back first. Alright, now you feel at ease. I heard that you used to chase after a girl in school, and that you're related to him? Sai, that's all in the past. It's the same with or without Qin Guang. That girl isn't suitable for me. By the way, that girl isn't simple. Her name is Wenwen. I have a photo of her here. You have to be careful of her. Be careful of her? That's right. You have to be careful of her. That girl seems to know martial arts. Anyway, she's very powerful. A dozen big men can't even get close to her. She's also very hot-tempered. I'm afraid that if she confirms the news of Qin Guang's death, she'll go crazy and find trouble with every suspicious person. Then she didn't find you? Not really. She hasn't appeared in school for a few days. I don't know where she went. You're still talking about the past. Aren't you very concerned about others? So, as the two of them were whispering to each other, a cold voice suddenly came from behind them. Are you two done talking? The two turned at the same time and saw a familiar face in the dim light of the fire escape. Their mouths opened wider and wider. They probably wanted to scream, "Ghost," or something. However, Qin Guang reached out and tapped their necks with lightning speed. The two of them couldn't make a single sound. The two immediately turned around and wanted to push open the sliding door of the fire escape to escape. However, Qin Guang flicked his fingers repeatedly. Two bolts of qi shot out from behind them and hit them squarely in the middle of their backs. Zheng He and Song Ningyuan felt their bodies go limp. They slumped to the ground like dough. Qin Guang looked down at the two of them. After about 5 seconds of silence, he said, "I'm really sorry. I'm not dead." Song Ningyuan's eyes widened. He couldn't understand what had happened at all. The dark web couldn't be lying. The video must be real. But why would Qin Guang appear in front of him? What the hell was going on? Something must have gone wrong somewhere. Song Ningyuan opened his mouth slightly. He really wanted to beg for mercy. Unfortunately, he could only make soft sounds in his throat. He couldn't say a word. Zheng He was calmer than him. His sixth sense told him that something was wrong. His right eyelid had been twitching non-stop in the private room. Looking at the expressionless Qin Guang, Zheng He suddenly recalled a memory that was about to dissipate. It was in the evening. He had mustered up his courage for a long time and tried to talk to the girl he liked, Wenwen. However, he had been infuriated by Qin Guang, who was standing beside Wenwen. At that time, he had only treated Qin Guang as an insignificant toad. Later on, he had even thought that he could find a few people to beat him up. That would be enough to make him back off obediently. However, he hadn't expected this kid to be so stubborn and unyielding. He could fight with his life on the line. Later on, he had found a martial arts expert in the school to cause trouble for him. However, he hadn't expected this guy to suddenly become an expert after not seeing him for a few days. After that, not only had he failed to woo Wenwen, but he had also annoyed her. She had even given him a verbal warning. Later on, he had bumped into him at the airport with Jiang Yage and Jin Shiyue. Jiang Yage, who had a powerful background, had stood up for him, and he had completely given up on the idea of being enemies with him. He had thought that he would have nothing to do with him from then on. He hadn't expected to run into him again because of his cousin. In fact, Zheng He hadn't expected things to turn out like this. Especially when his cousin Song Ningyuan had said that he wanted to find an assassin. He had even thought that he was just saying it out of anger. However, he hadn't expected him to really do it. Just now, when he had learned of Qin Guang's death, Zheng He still couldn't get rid of the joy in his heart. Although he might not have a chance to get Wenwen in the future, he had always felt the pleasure of revenge. But why now? Why was he standing here? What would he do to the two of us? Zheng He thought silently. He struggled hard, but he couldn't even move his fingers. He even thought to himself, if I hadn't come here today, would I have been able to stay out of this? However, how could there be so many ifs in this world? In the corridor of this club, a cold and gloomy aura emerged out of thin air, completely enveloping the hearts of the two cousins, Zheng He and Song Ningyuan. Chapter 12-15. Qin Guang didn't intend to waste any more time on these two. He didn't care if Zheng He was involved or not. In his eyes, these two brothers were one. Even if Zheng He didn't fork out the money, he definitely knew about this. Then he would be considered Song Ningyuan's accomplice. In a sense, Qin Guang's guess was right. A long time ago, when Zheng He first discovered that Song Ningyuan and Qin Guang had met, he had half-jokingly suggested that they should just find a real professional to kill Qin Guang. But Zheng He didn't expect Song Ningyuan to take it seriously and actually do it. Not only that, but Song Ningyuan wasn't the only one who put a bounty on Qin Guang. Including others, the total bounty was as high as 400 million yuan. Moreover, Qin Guang and his family were deeply troubled. If only he hadn't made things difficult for him back then. If only he hadn't meddled in Song Ningyuan's affairs. Before he died, Zheng He still had this thought in his heart. Song Ningyuan didn't think so much. The moment Qin Guang appeared, he had already guessed his ending. He just couldn't understand why Qin Guang didn't die even though the bounty was already gone and the video was 100% real. He even thought that this might be an illusion. Perhaps everything would return to normal after he woke up tomorrow. Looking at Qin Guang's large palm pressing on his forehead, Song Ningyuan gradually felt his breathing getting heavier and his heartbeat slowing down. All kinds of memories from his short life gradually surged into his mind. There were his naughtiness when he was young, his innocent youth, and the debauchery he enjoyed when he was studying abroad. Even more so, he returned to his family and participated in the management of the family business. All of these things flashed past his mind like a white steed passing through a crack. In the end, all his thoughts turned to his current state of extreme distress and exhaustion. How did he kill me? He had only pressed his hand on my body, but why did I feel as though all of my internal organs were being squeezed? Could it be that Qin Guang was the same as the rumors I'd heard before, that he had a legendary inner force that surpassed human understanding? But I've never heard of this kind of internal energy. This was even more powerful and terrifying than the kind of people my father had told me about. Those people could only use the so-called inner force to move faster, jump higher than ordinary people, run faster than ordinary people, and even use their palms to break bricks. However, I had never heard of anyone who could make someone's internal organs fail just by touching their palms. Expressionlessly, Qin Guang looked at Zheng He and Song Ningyuan, whose faces were getting paler and paler, and whose eyes were getting more and more terrified. There was no ripple in his heart. Finally, the two of them slowly closed their eyes, and their heartbeats completely stopped. Without any pause, Qin Guang turned around and left, his figure disappearing into the fire escape. 10 minutes later, he returned to an alley about 2 kilometers away from the clubhouse. He found the motorcycle from a pile of garbage and rode it away. With the help of an insider, Qin Guang had completely avoided all the surveillance of Skynet. Of course, it didn't matter even if he had been seen. With modern medical methods, it was impossible to find out how Song Ningyuan and Zheng He died. No matter how good a forensic doctor was, it would be the same. In the end, they could only conclude that the two brothers had done something crazy before, which eventually led to their sudden deaths. 3 hours later, he rode the motorcycle back to Lilai quietly. Xuelin hadn't slept all night. She waited for him to come back before reporting, "Brother Guang, there's news from Wujing. Song Ningyuan, the vice president of Tiansong Water Group, and Zheng He, the senior director of New Ray Group, both died suddenly." "When did the report come in?" 10 minutes ago. Qin Guang shrugged. "There's something wrong with the public security management in Wujing City. They died more than 2 hours ago before it was reported. Well, it should be rectified." "Well, Brother Guang, it said that the clubhouse temporarily suppressed the news for a while after they found out that the two were dead. Later, other people who were with them saw that the situation was not good and quietly released the news. The Song family and the Zheng family came to the clubhouse together. In addition, the clubhouse is under the jurisdiction of Director Wu Tong." Qin Guang said, "Ahem, then it's not the police's problem. It's the clubhouse's operator's fault. Let's not get involved in this mess." Qin Guang decisively restrained himself. He had almost rushed to the temple of the Dragon King by acting tough. After waiting for a while, Qin Guang fell into a deep sleep. The mess in Wujing had nothing to do with him. Except for himself, Xuelin and Xan Qin, no one knew how Zheng He and Song Ningyuan died. It didn't matter even if they were suspected. No one could ever find any evidence. The next day, after Qin Guang gave the order, many relatives and friends who had temporarily lost their freedom because of the reward incident gradually relaxed their vigilance. Perhaps the hidden sentries still couldn't leave in a short time, but everyone could regain their freedom of movement. By right, Qin Guang should be rushing back to school to take the final exam at this time. But after thinking about it, he decided to cancel the exam first. He had a very good reason in his heart. Maybe one day the integration of the real world and the real world would be completely completed. He felt uneasy and couldn't leave. Unfortunately, Qin Guoli didn't buy it. Seeing that he refused to leave at home, he thought that he wanted to help rebuild the villa, so he chased after him and taught him a lesson. You only know how to be sneaky all day long. How long have you not been to school? Do you think I don't know that there will be a final exam soon? You even want to avoid this? Why don't you find some connections to help you pass the exam? What if someone leaks it out? People will point at the backbone of the Qin family and say that I'm dishonest and that my family is sneaky. Qin Guang looked at his father helplessly. Dad, aren't you putting the cart before the horse? Although it said that the sky is clear after the rain, I still feel uneasy. There will be a final exam soon, but I have already applied for a makeup exam. It's the same if I take the makeup exam next semester. Don't you see that I'm reading now? Saying that, Qin Guang also shook the textbook in his hand. It was an introduction to industrial water pollution control. Really? Of course. That's fine. Building a house now costs about 300,000 yuan in advance. Give it to me. We didn't buy insurance? Are you kidding me? Who do you think we are? Why would we buy insurance with such little money? Isn't it embarrassing? I think, according to your financial thinking, even if our hot pot restaurant didn't have that incident, I'm afraid it would go bankrupt sooner or later. In fact, Qin Guang did not do nothing when he came to the county. He had already asked people to start investigating the Schultz family, Sanxing Group, and related personnel of Japan's financial groups. Although he could directly kill them and use mental cultivation to catch them and put them on trial with his previous experience, he was not willing to take this risk easily. Every time he used mental cultivation, his mind would become extremely tired and dispirited. Who knows, the world might suddenly change, and if something went wrong, it would be too late for regrets. After 7 days, Qin Guang had almost finished the entire semester's curriculum by himself. Finally, there was a tip-off from outside, confirming that there was a problem with the Schultz family's financial flow. The amount was as high as 150 million US dollars. Chapter 12:16. He didn't feel relieved after the matter was confirmed. He still had to face the same problem. Should he go on this trip or not? The Schultz family was in Los Angeles. Qin Guang had two choices in front of him. He could either go to Los Angeles personally to find the person in charge of the Schultz family and send him on his way, or he could use someone else's help and order the Guangdong General Administration to send an expert to act on his behalf. The second method seemed easy, but Qin Guang couldn't make up his mind easily. Other than a few people, most inner force martial artists were only at the peak of skin force. Although they were much more powerful than ordinary people, they could still be killed by modern high-tech weapons. Foreign countries were not like domestic ones. No matter how big the incident was, it was still within the scope of one's own people. However, it was different on the other side of the ocean. It was not one's own territory. The Schultz family's status was not to be underestimated. A slight move in one part would definitely affect the rest. Although the dark web's bounty happened in the underground world and ordinary people didn't know about it, it was no secret in the eyes of those at the top of the pyramid. Therefore, everyone in the world could guess that he had a grudge against the Schultz family. Now, in the eyes of others, he was already dead. If something happened to the Schultz family, others would think that it was most likely his subordinates who took revenge. Since Wuxia could develop special equipment that could deal with inner force martial artists, it was impossible that America, which was more technologically advanced, didn't have it. He had nothing to fear, but if other martial artists died because of him, Qin Guang wouldn't feel at ease. He was in a difficult position. He hated that he couldn't use God mode like before, and he didn't have the ability to split himself into two. In the past few days, Qin Guang Group, which had not responded for a long time, finally became the target of public criticism. Women was still on the air. My God. They were also in the midst of production and would resume broadcasting next week. The huge Qin Guang Group acted as if nothing had happened. They didn't comment on the rumors that Qin Guang was dead. The result was that the calmer they appeared to be, the more they revealed themselves. In the first few days, there were self-media people who clarified on the internet, saying that it was impossible for Qin Guang to die so easily. But as time passed, these voices gradually disappeared, and more people felt that Qin Guang might really be dead. More people went to Gokyo University to look for Qin Guang's classmates, just to ask about him, but no one knew anything. They all said that they hadn't heard from him for a long time. Sun Xiaoxuan, Lin Jingwei, and the others who knew the inside story would never reveal it. There were even bold reporters who directly rushed to the Qin Guang Group's headquarters in Wujing and blocked the door to ask about Qin Guang's whereabouts. The employees also knew nothing about it. As for the company's senior management, they all said that they had no comment. They didn't know either. Not only that, but there were even hardcore fans of Almighty Superman who simply called the police. Even Wu Tong received quite a number of police notifications. Chen Guoli, who originally planned to renovate his house, couldn't stand the disturbance, so he simply went into hiding again. Out of sight, out of mind. In the end, Qin Guang still went out. There was no other reason. After another day passed, the Sanxing Group's capital flow was also found out. Not only that, the person in charge of the Sanxing Group was also not in the country at this time, but in Luoyang City. Qin Guang didn't need to think to know that it was very likely that after the Sanxing Group participated, they guessed that the Schultz family was most likely an accomplice. For the purpose of benefits, the Sanxing Group decided to take the initiative to rope in the Schultz family. Then, the Sanxing Group and the Japanese consortium should be preparing to completely encroach on the resources in the photocatalyst field that he had painstakingly managed to operate. As he expected, Zhuo Jingxi, who was in Prince's laboratory, received a call from the Sanxing Group and the Japanese consortium at the same time, giving quite harsh conditions for cooperation. Zhuo Jingxi rejected them without hesitation, but things didn't end there. The other party seemed to have guessed from the beginning that Zhuo Jingxi wouldn't easily agree, so they gave all kinds of hints and warnings over the phone. Since the other party had already done this, Qin Guang felt that he couldn't wait any longer. It seemed that the fusion of the two worlds wouldn't be that fast for a while. Maybe if he moved fast he could make it back in time after a long trip. After making up his mind, he immediately went out. This time he found an expert in disguise from the headquarters to follow him. With this disguise technique he could save a lot of inconvenience when moving abroad. 2 days later, Qin Guang, who was disguised as a middle-aged man, appeared at the Los Angeles airport hand in hand with a very beautiful middle-aged woman. "Mr. Zhong, let's go to the hotel to rest first." The middle-aged woman put half of her body on Qin Guang and said in a very sweet voice. Qin Guang slightly struggled and pushed the woman further away. "Okay, Inu, restrain yourself. We came out for business. Don't use those tricks on others on me." The woman named Inu's face slightly changed. She slightly retracted her body and said embarrassedly, "I'm sorry, it's a professional habit." Qin Guang sighed. "I know. Otherwise I would have thrown you out a long time ago." He had no choice but to bring along the eldest disciple of Moon Sunflower sect, Inu. This Moon Sunflower sect was a sect that mainly trained female assassins in ancient times. It was quite famous in history. Although it was now in decline, it was still one of the 27 sections. It was especially skilled in disguise, concealment, and assassination. At that time, Qin Guang had mentioned it casually. It just so happened that the eldest disciple of Moon Sunflower sect, Inu, was also happy to come, so he brought her out. He didn't think that this girl, who was in her late 20s, would be so open-minded. First, she disguised Qin Guang as a middle-aged man. Qin Guang had originally asked her to disguise herself as a young woman and pretend to be his daughter, but she insisted on disguising herself as a middle-aged beauty. She even said that disguising themselves as husband and wife would make it easier for them to move around. It would also be convenient for them to stay in the same room when they were outside, and it would be convenient for them to touch up their makeup. Qin Guang felt that what she said made sense, so he agreed casually. But now, when they were in China, she was quite restrained, perhaps because she was afraid of being returned. But ever since she got on the plane, she began to be quite restless. She had all kinds of fun in front of Qin Guang, the well-deserved master of Wulin. If Qin Guang was still the virgin he used to be, he might have fallen into her trap without being able to resist. But now he was no longer the ignorant man he used to be. He didn't lack girls by his side and he had things on his mind. Besides, Inu looked quite impure, so she was really not his type. The two of them went straight to the hotel they had booked in advance. Qin Guang boarded the plane under the pseudonym Zhong Jun. He planned to sneak out later. "Mr. Zhong is here to touch up your makeup." After being threatened by him once, Inu obediently restrained herself. She no longer used the methods she used on other men on Qin Guang, but there was still a hint of seduction in her eyes. Qin Guang was distraught. He said, "If you want to touch up your makeup, then touch up your makeup. Just control your eyes a little." "Sai, why do you have to do this? I promise to give everyone in the headquarters a lesson. Whether you do it or not, I treat everyone equally. You really don't have to do this." Inu stuck out her tongue again when her thoughts were exposed. This time she had completely returned to normal. "Oh, I got it." No matter what, the Moon Sunflower sect's disguise technique was no small matter. It was fine even if it was washed off with water. After touching up his makeup, Qin Guang went out to scout out the situation. Being abroad was different from being in China. He tried his best not to use any communication devices. He had to rely on himself for everything. The hotel they were staying at was about 5 kilometers away from the Schultz family's manor. Qin Guang didn't find it tiring. He put his hands in his trouser pockets and strolled in that direction. Chapter 12:17. It hadn't been a long time since he last came to Luoyang City. This bustling city hadn't changed at all because of his visit. The only difference was that there were no longer posters with his handsome face hanging on the streets and alleys. Instead, there were posters of other people, such as Gillette's razor, or someone's new movie or play. What Qin Guang had done in the past had indeed turned the bustling Luoyang city upside down for a period of time, but time and the city had worked together to erase the deepest traces. The only thing that reminded Qin Guang of the time when he came to Luoyang City with women was probably the poster of Emma Watson. After acting in Romeo and Juliet with Qin Guang, little Watson's acting skills seemed to have improved out of thin air. She was now more and more famous in the European and American drama industry. From a rising star in a small circle, she had now become the face of a drama. She deserved it. Qin Guang was never stingy with his generosity. He was also willing to let those who were willing to help him benefit from it, whether it was intentional or not. Unfortunately, he did not have much time now. Otherwise, Qin Guang would have liked to see Emma Watson's performance. But he decided not to do so now. Qin Guang, who had disguised himself as a middle-aged man, did not have to worry about being recognized at all. However, he still habitually guarded against the surveillance cameras on the street. No one would believe it, but there were fewer surveillance cameras on the streets of Luoyang City than in Wujing City. It was quite easy for Qin Guang to avoid them. No wonder the crime rate in America was so high. But it was not as if Qin Guang had never encountered something that troubled him. In order to avoid the surveillance cameras, he accidentally walked into an alley. He had only taken a few steps when a few very strong black men jumped out from a small door next to the alley. "Hey, old Asian man, leave your phone and wallet behind and get lost. This is not a place you should be." The black man standing at the front was shaking a long dagger in his hand. His waist was bulging and he was probably carrying other things with him. Bang, clang, dong, dong. 10 seconds later, Qin Guang clapped his hands and left, leaving a few of his buddies moaning on the ground. The dagger was broken into 3 pieces, and the guns they had hidden at their waists were scattered everywhere. Qin Guang whistled and cursed in his heart. Was it because his disguise was too simple and honest? What era was it? How could he still be robbed? Someone actually dares to rob me? Do you really know how to write the word death? Well, they can't write Chinese. Originally, he thought that the Schultz family would be heavily guarded at this time, but after arriving here, he found that was not the case. The huge gate of the manor was filled with cars and people, and the atmosphere was even a little festive. Qin Guang didn't approach him rashly. Instead, he found a cafe nearby, ordered a latte and sat down. He then asked the waiter to bring him a copy of Hitchcock's suspense stories and pretended to read it. No one noticed that most of Qin Guang's attention was on the people going in and out of the Schultz family's manor. He saw several Asian faces. These people looked quite wretched. They bowed their heads when they walked as if everyone was their boss. Needless to say, they were people from the Sanshin group. In addition, some people who looked like doctors came out from time to time. They should be the psychiatrists hired by the Schultz family to treat the young Schultz. Qin Guang couldn't help but snicker. "Are you kidding me? You're going to cure the guy that I made crazy? Then I, Qin Guang, should go home and plant sweet potatoes." After sitting for an hour or so, he got up and left. This was the last time he confirmed his guess. There was no need to hesitate anymore. The Schultz family was indeed involved in this matter. Old Schultz had come out for a short time to see off a well-known brain doctor in the United States. When the doctor left, he was frowning. Obviously, he couldn't do anything about Schultz's condition. Old Schultz didn't get the result he wanted and he looked gloomy. However, after his secretary came over and said something, Old Schultz smiled as he walked back as if he had heard something good. 5 minutes later, Qin Guang received an internal notification from Lu Xiaoyang. Lu Xiaoyang had just called to report that America's cinemas had gone crazy and requested for Woman to be removed. Although Women had passed its peak, the drop in the box office was still within a controllable range. The daily box office was still more than 5 million, and the drop was getting slower. Many performing arts students and people who were interested in the art of film became the main consumers. They watched the movie 10 times or even 20 times. Because of this, it was understandable that the screening rate was lowered. However, women could challenge the record of the longest screening period in North America, which was 3 months. This was a historical record for Chinese films. More importantly, the longer the movie stayed in the cinema chain, the more money they could make. Chen Guang didn't reply to the message, but it didn't take long for the inside information to be updated again. It was confirmed that the Schultz family had taken the initiative to contact several companies that controlled the largest cinema chains in North America, hoping that they would stop showing women. In fact, for these cinema chains, it didn't make any difference whether they stopped showing the movie or not. Now that women had passed its peak, it didn't matter who the movie was. If nothing had happened to Chen Guang, these cinema chains might not have been willing to offend him. However, the fact that he was beheaded had almost become an open secret. Since he was already dead, they didn't need to care about his feelings. Chen Guang didn't need to ask anyone else. Combining the two things, he guessed that was what old Schultz's secretary had just told him. He couldn't help but sneer. Did they really think that I was dead? The terrible thing wasn't over yet. After Chen Guang returned to the hotel and had dinner, Zhuo Jingxi, who was in Prince, called him. She said that things had changed again. Although her personal safety wasn't a problem under Auntie May's protection, Prince's laboratory was obviously disloyal. Many new faces appeared outside the laboratory. Not only that, but Prince's laboratory also changed their previous happy cooperation and began to spy on Zhuo Jingxi's experimental process more wildly and arrogantly. If she hadn't asked people to keep an eye on the laboratory 24 hours a day, Prince would have quietly sneaked in to steal the samples. In the face of a $100 billion market, there was no real morality in this world. In the past, due to Chen Guang's identity and influence, he was extremely powerful both in and outside of Wuxia. Whether it was Prince's laboratory, the major photocatalyst partners, or the cinema chains, they all followed the rules. But now that something had happened to Chen Guang, many of the tricks hidden in the dark had been revealed. Chen Guang felt that it was very likely that Prince's laboratory wasn't just eyeing the samples. In other people's hearts, Teacher Zhuo was the one who had the 5 god-level formulas. Not only that, but she also had knowledge that surpassed the times. Therefore, Prince's real goal should be to keep Teacher Zhuo and put her under house arrest. Behind this matter wasn't just this well-known laboratory. It was impossible to say that without the tacit consent of the people in power in America. Standing in front of the window and watching the slowly setting sun outside, Chen Guang sighed. You guys forced me to do this. Human nature is really terrible. Chapter 12-18. In the past few days, the staff of Qingguang Group had all left Los Angeles for New York. This was an order from Chen Guang. Luoyang City was the base camp of the Schultz family. He could not rule out the possibility that the Schultz family would continue to cause trouble for his company's employees after he died. Therefore, it was better to avoid trouble. Before the dust settled, Chen Guang asked the staff of Qingguang Group to temporarily evacuate Luoyang City. He did not want to give the Schultz family any opportunity. In New York, Tang Xiaokai's network was very wide. He could cover both the legal and illegal forces. The Chinese forces in Chinatown were not weak either, so their safety was more guaranteed. However, what Chen Guang was most worried about now was not the staff of Qingguang Group, but Zhuo Jingxi, who was protected by Auntie May and several special elites. Although there were plenty of people on the other side, a tall tree attracted the wind. He could only blame the things he had left for Zhuo Jingxi were too eye-catching. He felt that they were insignificant, but in the eyes of others, just 5 photocatalyst formulas were worth a rich oil field. Once this resource was obtained by any technology company, it could even create a trust company comparable to Rockefeller. It would have an absolute global monopoly for at least 20 to 30 years. Who would not be tempted by this kind of resource? Not to mention America, which had always occupied a dominant position in various fields of technology. If it was just a civilian force, Zhuo Jingxi's safety would not be too worried. However, once it involved America's political power, even with Auntie May's protection, it might not be safe. Teacher Zhuo's life might not be in danger. It was more likely that he would be placed under house arrest. However, Auntie May and the other special elites would definitely die. I really have to hurry up. With this thought in mind, Chen Guang said goodbye to Yin. He first went to the window and looked down. Then he quietly snuck out of the hotel room. If a hotel security guard happened to see him go out at this time and then looked at the surveillance, he would find something particularly strange. There was clearly a person walking out, but there was no image in the surveillance at all. This was because Chen Guang had used the flowing light shadow technique he had learned from the realm of Zhenwu. He had spread out his internal energy in a special way and arranged it around his body so that the light around him would be refracted at a certain angle. Naturally, there was nothing in the picture taken by the camera at the end of the aisle. However, this move wasn't that bugged. It wasn't true invisibility. Once the light's entry point changed, it wouldn't work. If it encountered a patrol, it would look no different from an ordinary person. The experts of Jianghu in the world of true martial used this trick to deal with the sentries that were located far away from them. The others would look at them from the same position, and their line of sight wouldn't shift. This flowing light shadow technique was very effective. In modern times, this move was even more useful. Using it to deal with surveillance cameras was like a divine skill tailor-made for them. This was something that Qin Guang had just dug out from his brain. You really couldn't blame him. He had learned too many things. Even a computer would need time to search the hard disk, let alone a human brain. In addition, there was another reason that prompted him to make this decision. Damn, this was actually the 28th floor. From here it was all smooth tempered glass walls. He couldn't jump or climb. It was a trap. Using the same method, Qin Guang made his way down the fire escape to the ground floor. He even encountered 3 property inspectors along the way, but they were all avoided by him. In the end, Qin Guang stuck to the bottom of a Land Rover and left the hotel through the underground garage. Although he didn't have much experience as a special agent, Qin Guang was still the boss of the Guangding General Headquarters. Before this trip, he had crammed a lot of knowledge for himself. He had also asked the experts in the bureau for advice. Inu, who was also good at this kind of thing, was with him. As long as he was serious, he could make things foolproof from the beginning. First, everyone thought he was dead. Second, once his whereabouts and news were leaked, it would leave such a signal in the Americans. The high-level officials of Wuxia personally massacred the Americans' wealthy family. It might cause international disputes on a certain level, and it would cause a lot of trouble for the old men. At this time, the Schultz manor was brightly lit. This was the 3rd consecutive day that the Schultz family had held a cocktail party. At the cocktail party, people exchanged toasts and whispered to each other. Old Mrs. Schultz was holding her husband's hand as they walked around the garden, greeting the guests from time to time. Mrs. Schultz's brows were tightly furrowed. Anyone could see that she was in a bad mood. When the two of them walked to the corner of the garden, an argument finally broke out. Red, why are we wasting time on this meaningless thing at this time? Shouldn't we continue to think of ways to treat Coleman? That's enough. Shut up. Do you think I haven't thought of a way? I see at least 8 doctors and 7 medical experts a day. Everyone is thinking of a way. I've used all my connections to try to contact everyone I can. In the whole world, other than the Wuxia brain and psychiatric experts, maybe only the aliens haven't received my people's calls. But is it useful? Although what you said is the truth, it's only been a month. We can't give up on Coleman so easily. Did I say to give up on him? Then what are you doing? Why are you still holding a cocktail party? I'm taking revenge. What do you mean? That Wuxia man made Coleman like this. Will I let him go so easily? Isn't he already dead? But his family is still alive, and his company is still earning dollars in the United States. If we do nothing, sooner or later the forces he left behind will become stronger and stronger. The Wuxia people won't let it go. So, I have to destroy them completely and not give them any chance. But what does this have to do with the cocktail party? The Wuxia people have a very complicated background. His death hasn't been completely announced yet, but this is like a buried bomb that can explode at any time. When that happens, what awaits us will be crazy revenge. Crazy revenge? The Wuxia military will send agents to Los Angeles to cause trouble for us? That won't happen. This is the United States. The Wuxia people can't do whatever they want. They have to care about the international impact. Then we don't have to care. But once our people or our family's business leave American soil, we will have to face a terrible threat. So, now I have to bring more people on board. This way we can confuse others and let the Schultz family form a community of interest with more people. Our real goal isn't to make profits, but to expand our network and turn our former friends into allies. Do you understand? After receiving the video from the dark web, old Schultz started his counterattack. So far it seemed to be working well. First, he had to drive Qin Guang's forces out of American soil. To make a force no longer a threat, the easiest way was to make them poor. In Schultz's opinion, money was equal to power. There was no such thing as absolute friendship in this world, only absolute interest. As long as Qin Guang's family ran out of money, at least they wouldn't be able to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a bounty like he did. Of course, even if that really happened, Schultz wasn't too afraid. Most of the world's top killers had gone crazy, and the rest of the small fry might not be a threat to the Schultz family. In addition, one of the guests at the banquet was the deputy director of the FBI. Next, the FBI would strengthen their investigation and control of the dark web. They might not be able to catch the hidden website operators, but it would be good to make them more restrained. Old Schultz's counterattack was comprehensive, but he missed one point. He didn't expect that Qin Guang wasn't dead and had come to Los Angeles to take his head. When Qin Guang arrived at the Schultz manor, it was already past 9 at night. The place was still noisy. The older generation was discussing in the conference room, and the younger generation was having a party in the banquet hall of another building. Coleman Schultz's younger brother, Randolph Schultz, was in charge of greeting the guests. He didn't seem to be in a good mood. Many people guessed that he might be secretly happy about his brother's misfortune. After all, it meant that the entire Schultz family's wealth belonged to him. But that wasn't the case. The two brothers were very close, and 30 of the $150 million on the bounty had been contributed by him. Randolph, don't be sad. Your brother will get better. A beautiful supermodel came up and comforted him. Randolph smiled. I hope so. Okay, you guys have fun. I'm going to see my brother. About 20 meters away from the window, under the bushes, Qin Guang was looking at Randolph Schultz with a pair of black eyes. The two brothers were roughly 50 to 60% similar in appearance, so Qin Guang could recognize them with a single glance. Relying on his half-baked lip-reading skills, he barely managed to read Randolph's words. So, Qin Guang decided to secretly follow Randolph Schultz. Qin Guang thought that they would hide the elder Schultz in a very secluded place. He didn't expect Randolph Schultz to come out of the house and go straight to the two-story bungalow next to it. Qin Guang used flowing light and shadow, and when the guard turned his head for a moment, he lightly tapped the ground and leaped onto the balcony. Coincidentally, the floor-to-ceiling window was open, so he slipped into the room and hid behind the curtain. Heavy breathing came from the front. Qin Guang slightly opened the curtain and saw Coleman Schultz, who was tied up with ropes. Ever since he was forced to make a deal with her, this guy had completely gone mad. Wait, what I said is a little ambiguous. Forget it, it doesn't matter. This guy is already a dead man. The door opened and Qin Guang flashed back behind the curtain again. It was Randolph Schultz who walked into the ward. Qin Guang wasn't in a hurry to make a move. He wanted to hear what Randolph had to say. Brother, I will avenge you. Damn, I'm already dead. Who are you going to take revenge on? We know where Qin Guang's family is. I won't let them go. *CK. This kid is capable. He has dreams, pursuits, and courage. I also know that the Chinese Qin Guang has a lot of women. I will get them all and then let them taste the wrath of the Schultz family. Qin Guang couldn't control his urge to grind his teeth. I will make all of Qin Guang's female family members become B. Fine, Master Guang didn't need to wait for him to finish. B, do you think I don't know? I'm a B. I'll kill Bill. His figure flashed and he appeared behind Randolph Schultz like lightning. Randolph only saw a shadow pass by the corner of his eye, and then he felt a chill on the back of his neck, as if someone had placed an ice cube on his neck. He tried to raise his hand, but it was futile. Then he felt his eyelids getting heavier and his head getting heavier. The world in front of him quickly turned dark. Kid, you are very ambitious, but it's not very realistic. If you want to achieve your dreams, you must first be alive. Randolph heard this voice before he died. Although he had never seen Qin Guang in person, he felt a sense of familiarity. This was not the first time he had watched many videos related to Qin Guang with hatred. But wasn't he already dead? I know what you're thinking, but it's meaningless. I hope you'll be a good person in your next life. Goodbye. His hand that was holding the back of Randolph's neck shook slightly, and 5 extremely destructive internal forces gushed out of his 5 fingers and blasted into Randolph Schultz's body. Therefore, many things in this world were made up of countless coincidences. Even if Randolph really hated Qin Guang to the core, if he hadn't coincidentally decided to take a look at Coleman's room at this time and said his innermost thoughts when he thought there was no one else around, Qin Guang might not have taken his life. 5 minutes later, Qin Guang left the house and returned to the manor. The meeting outside was still going on, and the hall where old Schultz and the others held the meeting was still brightly lit. Qin Guang leaned against the window of the meeting hall and listened for a while. A cold expression appeared on his face. All right, only old Schultz, his wife, and the people from Sanxin Group were left inside. They were currently discussing how to deal a deeper blow to Qingguang Group and Chengguang Environmental Protection, which had their roots in China. They even expanded the scope of their attack to Tang Zhao's foundation. In addition, Sanxing Group was also certain that Zhuo Jingxi would not be able to return to China. Their plan was very good, but unfortunately they had met Qin Guang. Early the next morning, a shocking piece of news suddenly exploded around the world. The first director and general manager of Sanxing Group, as well as the head of the Schultz family, who held a high position in the global aviation industry, had mysteriously died. There were no signs of fighting at the scene, and there were no wounds on the bodies of the dead. They were not poisoned and there was no suffocation. No one knew what exactly happened, but these people had died silently in the Schultz manner. It was like a curse from hell, and it sent chills down everyone's spine. As for Qin Guang, he had already changed his name to Zhong Jun and boarded a plane to Japan's capital. Chapter 12-19. Wasida's team wanted to obtain the photocatalyst technology, but they were rejected by Qin Guang. Furthermore, they were completely excluded. Qin Guang thought this was just a normal business decision. He didn't expect them to be so crazy. Photocatalysis was just one of their many research directions. Perhaps they had invested hundreds of millions of dollars in this field, but the competition in scientific research had always been the winner takes all. Unless they could get the sympathy of the winner and were willing to cooperate with each other to share part of the technology, the loser would often lose everything. But even so, there were countless scientific research institutions in the world competing in the same or similar projects all the time, but there were usually only one or two winners in the end. Others would either lose all their investments in the early, middle, and later stages, or helplessly continue to push forward with their own research and development, taking out products and technologies that were not as good as others to drink the leftovers. Most of the time, the leading companies would still be willing to share certain benefits. After all, promoting a new technology and product was different in different countries around the world. Cooperating with local technology companies was the easiest and most profitable way. Even if the leading companies refused to cooperate, the lagging companies could still use national boundaries as barriers to occupy a relative market in their own land. Because of this, Qin Guang slightly underestimated the backlash from Sanxing Group and the Japanese consortium. Sitting on the plane, listening to the conversation of the Japanese people next to him, he finally understood the reason. The two people next to him were talking about himself and photocatalysis. These two people seemed to be professors at Japanese universities, and they were very familiar with the progress in the global science and technology field. The reason why these two forces were willing to take the risk was because of Qin Guang's absolute lead in the field of photocatalysis. Unlike other scientific research competitions, the 5 God-level formulas he took out were too far ahead of others. No one could see any hope of turning the tables. Even the tried and tested barriers in other fields were meaningless. No company that produced water pollution could resist the temptation of these 5 photocatalysts. The cost control that this once-and-for-all technology could bring was enough to make everyone go crazy. Although it would be very expensive to purchase the materials for the first time, after the adoption of these new products, the entire sewage treatment process would be greatly simplified. Whether it was energy consumption, drug consumption, labor costs, or even the construction costs in the new process treatment process, they would all undergo earth-shaking changes. It was the nature of businessmen to pursue profits. Unless there was a policy that completely violated the law of the market, no one in the world would be able to resist these 5 formulas, and the national barriers would completely disappear. As the two companies that were completely excluded by Qin Guang, they would completely lose. Therefore, Sanxing Group and the Japanese consortium finally chose the only way out. Unfortunately, they failed. At this point, Sanxing Group had paid the price. The strange death of their leader would make them a mess. Now they had no time to care about what was happening in the outside world. When Qin Guang stood in front of the world again, people in Sanxing Group might have doubts, but they wouldn't do anything. Maybe they would even pray that the terrible curse would not continue to spread to them. After a day of work, Yamada Hideho dragged his tired body back to his home on the 9th floor of the Capitol building in the center of Tokyo City. This was a duplex apartment with a floor area of nearly 300 square meters. This kind of house might not be very luxurious, but in this area, in this building, this type of apartment determined the value of this house to be close to 80 million renminbi. People who were qualified to live in this building were either rich or powerful in Japan. Some people might say that not living in a villa was not a hero, but that was pure bullshit. Only God knew how expensive a house in Tokyo City was. Yamada Hideho was the eldest son of the chairman of Yamada Corporation and the current executive president of the corporation. His identity was one of the top people in the world. And Yamada Corporation was the main sponsor of Wuxia Photocatalyst Laboratory. If Wuxia could produce results, then Yamada Kai would be the biggest beneficiary. They had the highest proportion of ownership of the patent, and they could enjoy the economic benefits brought by the transformation of the results. Of course, if Wuxia's research results were destroyed, the nearly $700 million that Yamada Kai had invested in it would go down the drain. Losing their investment was not the most devastating part. Now that the whole world knew that photocatalyst technology could be called an epoch-making new field, what they lost was the future. Although many people still thought that this field was slightly metaphysical, it was hard to say whether it was true or not. But in the end, it was because the relevant technology on the market was not mature, and the catalytic reaction conditions were too harsh. After the businessmen got the half-baked technology, they exaggerated it to make huge profits. In the end, many people thought that the so-called photocatalyst was a scam. But real scholars knew that things were not as simple as ordinary people thought. It was not that there were no powerful photocatalysts, but the production cost was too high, and the effect could not reach the point where people could ignore the cost. But judging from the technical results revealed by Zhuo Jingxi, the person in charge of the newly established Morning Light Environmental Protection, the formula in her hands could reach the point where it could ignore the cost, and she had already developed a mature industrial production process. She was even currently conducting industrial production in the laboratory, and it would soon be put into use. The impact of this on the entire industry was self-evident. If Morning Light Environmental Protection completed the entire process in the current state that they had announced, then the Wuxia Photocatalyst Laboratory that was fully sponsored by Yamada Corporation would definitely become cannon fodder. Therefore, Yamada Hideho made the decision to fund a bounty on the real person behind Morning Light Environmental Protection, Qin Guang, and his family. He even expanded the scope of the bounty to all of his close friends. Of course, everything was a cover. The ultimate goal was still to kill Qin Guang, and then encourage those in power in America to get their hands on the photocatalyst. With the relationship between Japan and the United States, as well as Yamada Kai's network, as long as the owner of the technology became the United States, they would definitely be entitled to a share of the wealth. This way, Wuxia, which had been excluded from the circle, could be reborn, and Yamada Kai would not be left empty-handed. Previously they had succeeded, but Yamada Hideho did not feel relaxed at all. There was still a lot of work to be done. He had even booked a flight ticket to Washington in advance. It was 3 days later. However, this morning, news of the death of the old Schultz's family suddenly came from the other side of the Pacific Ocean. At the same time, another ally, the person in charge of Sanshin Group, was also killed. Yamada Hideho was confused and terrified. He did not know what he should do next. That night, before he went home, there were actually hidden sentries all over the Imperial Capitol building. He could not be sure if the heavy losses of the Schultz family and Sanshin Group were the revenge of Qin Guang's men. However, his instinct told him that he had to do something. It was very likely that he would be the next one to be cursed. Not only him, but the old house of the Yamada family, where Yamada Hideho's father, Yamada Masaichi, lived, was also on guard. At 8:30 that night, Qin Guang officially stepped onto the shiny floor of the East Capitol Airport. The moment he walked out of the ferry, he saw at least 8 hidden sentries in the hall not far away. These people were scrutinizing everyone who got off the plane. Qin Guang took the initiative to hold Yinyu's arm as if nothing had happened. Yinyu leaned towards Qin Guang again and pressed her full breasts on Qin Guang's arm. The expression on her face was very sweet, but her heart was calm. She really could not get excited. Only she, who was leaning close to Qin Guang, could understand that at this moment, the heart of the former director of the Guangdong General Administration was so cold that it made people shiver. Chapter 12:20. Mr. Zhong, are we going to stay here first or are we going to walk around Tokyo? It's rare to come here, it's a pity not to see the scenery here. As the two walked out of the airport hand in hand, Yinyu, who was leaning on Qin Guang, suggested casually. Qin Guang thought for a moment. Let's walk around, go to Shinjuku and see Kabukicho. You men only know how to go to these romantic places all day long. What do you know? This is the biggest feature of Japan. This is the pillar of other people's industry. I came here as an international friend. Of course, I have to spread the prestige of the Chinese people. Go, 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 go. If you talk too much, get the hell out of my hotel. Yinyu shook Qin Guang's arm and said coquettishly, Okay, you're the boss, you have the final say. I know I'm wrong. Although Yinyu had disguised herself as a middle-aged woman, she still had a pretty face and a charming figure. Her appearance at this time was really a bit pitiful. Qin Guang's face was seduced, his heart was calm, but the passers-by felt that he was too much. How could he be so fierce to a beautiful woman? At least you know what's good for you. Qin Guang proudly straightened his neck, like a nouveau riche. After that, the two casually took a taxi and went straight to Shinjuku. Just after the two left, the short man who was standing on the side of the road with them anxiously waiting for a taxi suddenly walked back, took out his phone and made a call. It's not these two. Are you sure? This man and woman just happened to fly from Los Angeles to Tokyo today, the most suspicious. I'm sure they are not a problem. The man should be a rich man, the woman is his female secretary or something. These two have already taken a taxi to Shinjuku, saying that they are going to Kabukicho. They got in Kawaguchi's car. If there is any abnormality, Kawaguchi will report. Very good, Kitajima, you arranged well. Continue to do your job. After the matter is over, your credit will be recorded. You will become a level 5 member of our Yamada group. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Takahashi. Qin Guang and Inu didn't stay idle in the taxi. Ever since the two of them said that they were going to Shinjuku, the taxi driver became especially enthusiastic. He even introduced the two of them to the traditional restaurants he was familiar with in broken English. It was said that they could even find famous teachers from home and abroad, just that the prices were a little higher. Qin Guang listened with great interest. He also used his broken English to converse with him in various ways. He talked about Muto-sensei, Matsushima-sensei, and then lamented over Makura-sensei's retirement. He then talked about Ohashi-sensei who had suddenly fallen off the pedestal, and finally Hattori-sensei who had been popular for many years and was still considered an outstanding talent. Chauffeur Kawaguchi was furious at Ohashi-sensei's depravity. What are you planning to do? You'll understand when we get to the custom shop. Why are you talking so much? Inu was a special talent from the underworld. There were pros and cons. The pros were that the skills she knew were beyond the reach of ordinary people. The cons were that compared to real agents, she was too talkative and not obedient. On the other hand, after Kawaguchi sent Qin Guang off, he immediately gave a call to the head of the Yamada group, Mr. Takahashi, and gave a brief report on their conversation along the way. Mr. Takahashi, there's no way this Chinese guy is a problem. I swear on my honor that he's not a top assassin, and he's definitely not Qin Guang's friend. He's just an ordinary tourist and he's familiar with our culture. I didn't expect that even though he's a middle-aged man, he would know the names of all the actresses I mentioned. If he didn't spend a lot of time on this, he wouldn't be able to do this. Alright, he's just an old pervert. With Kawaguchi and Kitajima's assurance, the surveillance on Qin Guang and Inu finally disappeared. As for Qin Guang, he walked into the custom shop that Kawaguchi recommended. It was a top-notch club on the 3rd floor of Shinjuku Tonglan Street. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.